Arizona's deserts are filled with more than just rattlesnakes, red rock cliffs, and endless stretches of sun-scorched sand. Beneath the burning sun, in the shadow of crumbling walls and broken windows, lie places that were once filled with life and now only echo with whispers of the dead. Hospitals where patients took their last breath, asylums where screams went unheard, and forgotten clinics where shadows still linger long after the doors were chained shut. These are not just ruins, they are time capsules of torment, scarred with human suffering. Many who dare to enter report footsteps following them, doors slamming in empty corridors, or a cold hand brushing across their skin when no one else is there. Tonight, we're diving deep into 25 of Arizona's most haunted abandoned hospitals and asylums. Each one holds a story, a ghost sighting, a lingering scream, or a dark legend that refuses to die. So turn off the lights, lock your doors, and let's begin our descent into Arizona's forgotten halls of horror. The old Phelps Dodge Hospital in Ijow, Arizona, stands as a silent sentinel on the edge of the desert, its crumbling walls and shattered windows gazing out over a town that once thrived on copper mining. Built in the early 1900s, it was intended to serve as a beacon of care for miners who labored deep underground in the blistering heat and choking dust. For decades, the hospital was the site of both desperate struggles for survival and inevitable tragedies. Yet long after the last patient left and the doors were sealed shut, the building has remained alive in another way, haunted by whispers, shadows, and cries that refuse to fade with time. The miners of Ijow endured some of the harshest working conditions imaginable. Accidents in the mines were frequent, from cave-ins to explosions, and men were often rushed to the hospital with little chance of survival. Inside those sterile halls, countless lives ended under flickering lamps and the sharp scent of antiseptic. The maternity ward was no less busy, filled with the cries of newborns and the agonized screams of their mothers. In a community built on the toil of miners, the hospital became the town's heart, a place of both joy and unbearable loss. When mining slowed and IO began to decline, the hospital fell quiet. Its windows were broken, its doors chained, and its equipment left to rust. But silence was not all that lingered within its walls. Visitors who dared to trespass into the ruins began reporting unsettling experiences. Some described the unmistakable sound of hospital gurneys rolling across tile floors, though the tiles had long since cracked and crumbled under the desert's grip. The echo of squeaking wheels would travel through the empty corridors, sometimes stopping abruptly as if halted by unseen hands. Those who followed the sound often found themselves staring into darkened rooms filled only with dust and shadows. Others spoke of footsteps pacing beside them, steady and deliberate, but vanishing whenever a flashlight swept across the hallway. One of the most chilling tales comes from the maternity ward. Paranormal investigators claim that late at night, the sound of a woman screaming in unbearable pain fills the air, reverberating off the peeling walls. Locals believe it may be the ghost of a young mother who died during childbirth, her anguish trapped forever in the place where her life ended. Some have even reported hearing the faint cry of an infant immediately after the scream, followed by silence so heavy it seems to suffocate anyone who dares remain. The hospital's reputation has grown so notorious that even hardened ghost hunters approach it with caution. Shadowy figures have been seen gliding between rooms, some dressed in what appear to be the tattered remnants of nurses' uniforms, others resembling patients wandering aimlessly. Photographs taken inside often reveal misty shapes or faces where none were visible at the time. One paranormal team swore they captured a clear voice on their recorder, whispering, "Don't leave me here." The voice was faint, strained, and filled with despair, as though it had traveled across decades just to be heard. A particularly unnerving legend surrounds the hospital's operating room. People who step inside describe a sudden chill, as though the desert heat has been sucked away. The air grows heavy, and some have claimed to hear the metallic clatter of surgical instruments striking trays. A few insist they have felt icy hands grip their wrists, preventing them from moving. Locals say the room is cursed by the spirits of miners who died under crude, desperate surgeries. their souls unable to find peace after so much pain. The isolation of the hospital amplifies its terror. Ajaw itself has become a quiet town, its streets often empty, its desert landscapes stretching endlessly in every direction. To stand inside the Phelps Dodge Hospital at night is to stand in complete silence, with only the creak of decaying wood and the whisper of the desert wind for company. Yet that silence is often broken by something unnatural, an unexplained whisper, a cough, a faint moan, or the sound of doors slamming deep within the building. Even those who dismiss ghost stories admit the atmosphere is suffocating, oppressive, and almost alive. Skeptics argue that the strange noises are simply the product of wind whistling through broken windows, of crumbling ceilings shifting with age, or of animals nesting in forgotten corners. But those who have felt the presence of something unseen insist the hospital is far more than just a decaying structure. Too many stories, too many frightened visitors, and too many eerie recordings point to something that defies explanation. Over the years, the old Phelps Dodge Hospital has become more than just an abandoned building. It has become a monument to human suffering and survival. It represents the sacrifices of miners who built the town of A, the mothers who brought life into the world only to lose their own, and the countless souls who passed through its doors, never to return home. Whether one believes in spirits or not, the weight of history presses on every visitor, reminding them that the past does not always stay buried. Today, the hospital remains locked in time, a place where the lines between the living and the dead blur. To step inside is to step into a different era, one where the clatter of gurney wheels and the cry of the dying still echo faintly against the cracked plaster. The desert may reclaim its buildings, but it cannot erase memory, and, in AO, memory has teeth. The old Phelps Dodge Hospital is more than abandoned. It is haunted by every soul that once lingered there, waiting, watching, and whispering through the dust. The Desert Sanitarium in Tucson, Arizona, stands as one of the desert's most unsettling relics. Its sun-bleached walls and hollowed corridors, echoing with memories of a time when hope and despair were bound tightly together. Built in the early 20th century, when tuberculosis was sweeping across America, the facility was founded on the belief that Arizona's dry, arid climate held healing powers. Families desperate to save their loved ones sent them here, believing that the warm desert sun and clean air would cure them. Instead, the sanitarium quickly became less a place of recovery and more a place of final rest. Hundreds of patients, thin and pale, coughing blood into handkerchiefs, would take their last breath within its sterile rooms, never to return home. Inside those walls, doctors worked tirelessly, but with limited tools and limited knowledge. Treatments at the time were rudimentary and cruel. Patients were ordered to spend long hours on open-air porches in the sweltering heat, breathing deeply, even as their lungs collapsed under the strain of disease. Some underwent experimental procedures involving collapsing one lung to allow the other to heal, or endured surgeries meant more to prolong suffering than bring true relief. The cries of the afflicted often carried through the corridors, mixing with the raspy coughs that never seemed to end. Over time, the sanitarium developed a reputation not as a place of healing, but as a warehouse of death, where hope entered, but rarely left. When tuberculosis treatments advanced and patients no longer flocked to the desert for cures, the sanitarium was abandoned. Its windows were shattered, its equipment left to rot, and the desert slowly began to reclaim its walls. But while the medical staff and patients left decades ago, many believe something else stayed behind. To this day, the Desert Sanitarium is whispered about in Tucson as one of the most haunted locations in the region. Those who dare step inside report experiences that defy explanation, as though the building itself refuses to die. Visitors often describe the oppressive feeling that takes hold the moment they cross the threshold. The air, though dry outside, feels heavy and stagnant within, filled with a musty scent that lingers in the lungs. Even in the blistering heat of summer, cold spots are reported in random corners, as though the spirits of the dead are still exhaling their final, chilling breaths. Doors that should barely move on their rusted hinges have been witnessed slamming violently, the sound cracking through the empty halls like a gunshot. Many explorers describe the same eerie phenomenon, no matter how silent they try to be. The faint echo of coughing follows them through the building, as if unseen patients are still struggling in the shadows. The coughing is often accompanied by whispers, fragmented voices calling softly, never loud enough to be understood. Paranormal investigators who have recorded audio inside the sanitarium have captured strange noises that seem to mimic those stories: wheezing gasps, whispered pleas, and even a faint voice repeating the word doctor. Others have captured what sounds like footsteps moving across long abandoned corridors, pacing slowly behind them. Some visitors swear they have felt invisible hands tugging at their clothing or brushing against their arms, leaving them frozen in place with terror. Perhaps the most disturbing accounts come from those who venture near the patient wards. The long rooms, once lined with hospital beds, are filled with peeling paint and broken glass, yet many say they are never truly empty. Some explorers claim to have seen the figures of emaciated patients sitting upright in the beds, their hollow eyes locked on them before dissolving into mist. Others have seen what appears to be a nurse in a white uniform walking steadily across the ward, vanishing when she reaches the doorway. One chilling story comes from a local photographer who entered to capture images of the decaying building. He claimed to hear coughing grow louder behind him, only to turn and find the outline of a man in a hospital gown standing at the end of the hall. The figure swayed for a moment before collapsing into the floor, disappearing without a trace. The photographer left immediately and vowed never to return. There are also rumors that the basement of the sanitarium, where medical records and supplies were once kept, is home to darker energies. Paranormal teams report extreme temperature drops, equipment malfunctions, and overwhelming feelings of dread while investigating there. Some claim that this is where the most restless spirits lingered, the ones who died alone in the shadows, their bodies removed quietly and their names soon forgotten. It is said that if you listen closely, you can still hear the rattle of gurney wheels on the cracked cement floor, moving toward a morgue that has long since decayed. Skeptics dismiss these experiences as the product of imagination, fueled by the building's grim history and its eerie, decaying atmosphere. But even skeptics admit that there is something unnerving about the desert sanitarium. Its silence is not the silence of abandonment, but something heavier, almost watchful, as if the building itself breathes with the weight of the lives it consumed. The stories are too numerous, too consistent, to simply ignore. The desert sanitarium is more than just a ruin. It is a monument to human suffering, a reminder of a time when the promise of healing turned into a sentence of death. Every cracked tile, every broken window seems to hold a story, a memory of someone who came here hoping for salvation, but instead found their grave. For those who walk its haunted halls today, the line between the past and the present blurs. The coughing, the whispers, the phantom figures are all echoes of a history too tragic to stay buried. In the endless expanse of the Arizona desert, the sanitarium stands alone, crumbling yet alive with the restless energy of the forgotten. Those who dare enter leave with the same unsettling conclusion: the desert sanitarium is not empty. Its patients may be long dead, but their ghosts are still there, waiting in the shadows, their suffering etched forever into the soul of the building. The Florence Asylum ruins in Florence, Arizona, stand as a grim and unsettling reminder of an era when mental illness was treated with fear and cruelty rather than compassion. While Florence is most often associated with its imposing prison, locals know of a different kind of confinement that once plagued the outskirts of the desert town. Hidden among dry brush and crumbling stone walls are the skeletal remains of an asylum whose name has been all but erased from history. No official records clearly mark its existence, yet whispers of its dark past echo across generations. It is said to have housed patients in the early 1900s, a time when the desert's silence made it an ideal place to keep society's most vulnerable out of sight. But unlike the prison where criminals served sentences, the asylum was a place of forgotten souls, locked away not to be rehabilitated, but simply hidden. The ruins are unassuming at first glance. Weather-beaten walls, sun-bleached bricks, and faint outlines of what may have been barred windows remain. surrounded by sand and scrub that seem eager to swallow them whole. Yet despite its decay, the air around the asylum feels heavy, as though carrying the weight of centuries of suffering. Locals rarely venture near it after sundown. They claim that once the desert night settles, the ruins come alive with things unseen. Stories passed down through the town tell of patients chained directly to the walls, their cries piercing the desert nights. With little knowledge of mental health and even less funding, treatment in facilities like this was often nothing more than starvation, restraint, and neglect disguised as care. Many were said to have perished here, either from illness, mistreatment, or despair, their bodies buried hastily in unmarked graves beyond the walls. Visitors who dare to step inside often describe a suffocating atmosphere. The interior has long since collapsed in places, but a few rooms still stand, their walls scarred with deep scratches that appear too deliberate to be the work of weather or time. Paranormal investigators have claimed to witness fresh scratches appearing on their arms during explorations, as though unseen hands are still reaching out in torment. One team reported entering a chamber with rusted iron rings embedded in the wall, perhaps once used to restrain patients. The moment their flashlights swept across the space, a sharp cry echoed, and one member found 3 long marks across his wrist, as if something had clawed him. But the most chilling tales come from those who linger in the ruins after dark. Locals say that if you stand near what was believed to be the main hall, you may hear faint voices carried on the desert wind. Some describe moans of anguish, while others recall hearing a woman's voice, weak and raspy, begging for water. A recording made by one paranormal team captured what they insist was a female voice repeating, "Please, water, please," before fading into static. For those who have heard it with their own ears, the experience leaves them shaken, convinced the plea is not just a residual echo, but an ongoing suffering that has never ended. Explorers also report shadow figures darting between the walls, often glimpsed only out of the corner of the eye. In the moonlight, shapes are said to move along the collapsed corridors, pacing as though they are still trapped in endless loops of despair. Some claim the figures are not merely passing shades, but aware of the living who trespass. Cold spots manifest suddenly, even in the desert heat, and whispers brush against the ears of visitors. So faint they seem to come from directly behind, though no one is there. Perhaps the most disturbing stories involve those who stay too long. There are accounts of visitors leaving the ruins and becoming plagued by nightmares, dreams of suffocating darkness, screams that never end, and being shackled in a room with no doors. Some even report waking with marks on their wrists or ankles, eerily similar to the restraints once used on patients. For many, these experiences convince them that the asylum's former residents do not rest peacefully, but reach out, desperate for recognition or release. The desert has a way of keeping secrets, burying them beneath sand and silence. Yet the Florence Asylum ruins resist being forgotten. They remain a scar in the earth, a place where the cries of the abandoned and the broken still linger, refusing to fade. No official history marks its legacy. No plaque commemorates the lives lost there. And perhaps that is why its ghosts remain so restless. For the people of Florence, it is not the prison that chills their bones when night falls, but the ruins outside of town, where the wind carries voices of the past, and the walls seem to remember every scream. Something unseen yet deeply felt. And so, most locals avoid it, allowing the desert to slowly reclaim the asylum, even as its spirits continue to cry out, waiting for someone, anyone, to finally listen. The Black Canyon Insane Asylum in Black Canyon City, Arizona, is one of those places where history has been reduced to fragments, leaving behind more questions than answers. Few official records remain of the institution, but the crumbling stone foundation and rusted iron gates that still cling stubbornly to the desert soil whisper of a grim chapter in Arizona's past. Built in the late 1800s, the asylum is remembered less for care and more for cruelty, a place where the mentally ill were often abandoned rather than treated. The desert sun has bleached the walls, and time has buried its name, but the stories that linger are far harder to erase. Locals say the asylum was never meant to heal, only to hide away those society deemed inconvenient. Patients were kept in barren rooms with little more than straw mats, chained when they resisted, and left to endure the blistering heat of the summers and the bitter chill of desert nights. With no real therapy and little oversight in such a remote area, many died here, some from neglect, others perhaps from despair. Though the asylum officially closed long ago, many believe the spirits of its unfortunate residents never left. The ghost stories surrounding the Black Canyon Insane Asylum are among the most chilling in the state. Travelers along the nearby highway often speak of seeing pale figures darting across the road in tattered hospital gowns, their bare feet making no sound on the pavement. Drivers who slam on their brakes report that the figures vanish instantly when caught in the beam of headlights, leaving behind only the uneasy pounding of their own hearts. Some truckers refuse to take that stretch of road after dark, convinced that the ghosts of the asylum wander endlessly, searching for a way out of the desert. Inside the ruins, the air feels charged, heavy with a weight that defies explanation. Explorers who have dared to enter describe a suffocating silence, broken only by the occasional clatter of falling stones, or something stranger. Chains rattling in the darkness have been reported more than once, though the site has long been stripped of anything of value, including restraints. Metallic bangs echo through the empty spaces, as if cell doors are still being slammed shut, even though the iron frames have long since rusted into immobility. Some describe hearing what sounds like hurried footsteps rushing just behind them, only to turn and find nothing but shadows stretching across the cracked floors. One paranormal team who visited the ruins late one summer night brought back recordings that unsettled even the skeptics among them. In one clip, a voice can be faintly heard, repeating the same word over and over. Cold, cold. The team swore the night had been unbearably warm, with the desert air clinging to their skin. Yet when they reviewed the audio, every person felt a shiver. Another recording captured a loud metallic clang, followed by a woman's scream, so piercing that one investigator ripped off her headphones, convinced someone had been hurt. Yet in the moment, no one had heard a sound. Visitors often report leaving the asylum with unexplained scratches on their arms, legs, or backs, angry red welts that sting as though freshly made. Some believe these marks are a desperate attempt by trapped spirits to make contact, while others think they are warnings, reminders that the living are not welcome among the dead. More than one explorer has claimed to see a gaunt figure crouched in a corner, watching silently with eyes too dark to belong to the living. When approached, the figure always fades into the stone. Local legend tells of one patient in particular, a man whose name has been lost to history, who spent decades confined within the asylum. He was said to be silent for years, never speaking a word, until one night he began to scream without end. The staff at the time reportedly chained him in the basement to keep the other patients calm, and some say he died there, alone, still screaming. Today, those who venture into what remains of the lower levels of the building swear they hear his voice echoing in the dark. Other times, it is a full-throated shriek that makes the walls tremble. Though the asylum is little more than ruins, the land itself seems unwilling to let go of its history. The desert wind carries whispers across the cracked foundation, and the shadows seem to linger a moment too long. For those who believe, the Black Canyon Insane Asylum is not just an abandoned relic, but a place where the line between past and present is dangerously thin. The tortured souls who once suffered within its walls may still be there, pacing endlessly in their invisible cells, rattling chains that no longer exist, and waiting for anyone foolish enough to step inside. Those who have visited rarely return, and those who do never forget the weight of the silence, the chill of unseen eyes, and the lingering sense that the asylum itself is alive. In the endless desert where the sun bleaches bones and time erases names, the Black Canyon Insane Asylum stands as a reminder that some places are abandoned not because they are forgotten, but because they are feared. The Bisbee Copper Queen Hospital, a relic of Arizona's mining history, stands as more than just an abandoned building. It is a monument to suffering, loss, and the lingering presence of spirits that refuse to leave. Once the lifeline of Bisbee, a booming mining town in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the hospital was built to tend to the endless stream of injured miners who labored in the depths of the copper mines. With mining came danger, collapsing shafts, explosions, gas leaks, and machinery accidents that often left men maimed or dead. The hospital's rooms bore witness to desperate surgeries, blood-soaked sheets, and whispered prayers that often went unanswered. Although it has long since been replaced by a modern medical facility, the original Copper Queen Hospital still looms over the town, its weathered walls steeped in stories both historical and supernatural. Residents of Bisbee will tell you the building is not empty. It breathes with the restless energy of the hundreds, perhaps thousands, who passed through its doors and never returned home. Even during its active years, the hospital was rumored to be touched by death. Nurses often reported seeing shadowy figures moving at the ends of corridors, only to discover no one there. Patients claimed to wake in the night to the sight of figures in miners' gear, dirt-covered and silent, standing at their bedsides before fading into nothing. Some staff even believed that the spirits of the dead miners lingered in the wards, unable to release themselves from the place where they took their final breaths. After its closure, these stories only grew stronger. Local explorers who dared to enter described the hospital as eerily preserved, as though waiting for patients to return. Rusted bed frames still sit in long-forgotten wards, their springs creaking in the silence. Old medical cabinets cling stubbornly to their hinges, and broken windows allow the desert wind to howl through the empty halls like mournful cries. The air feels heavy, stale, and charged with something unseen. One of the most common ghostly reports comes from those who hear the steady, rhythmic beeping of medical equipment machines that were removed decades ago. Paranormal investigators have brought in recording devices and captured strange sounds. The faint hum of oxygen tanks, the metallic clang of surgical tools, and voices whispering just below the edge of comprehension. In one recording, a man's weak voice seems to say, "Help me," though the room was empty. The spirits of nurses also seem to linger. Several witnesses claim to have seen a woman in an old-fashioned nurse's uniform, her cap starched white, moving down the hallways. She appears to carry a clipboard and seems to tend to invisible patients before vanishing into thin air. Some even describe feeling the brush of her hand on their arm, gentle but cold, as though checking their pulse. Other encounters are less kind. In the basement, where autopsies were once performed, explorers report overwhelming feelings of dread. Some claim to hear the scraping sound of metal against bone, or the wet slap of surgical gloves against a table. There are stories of visitors being suddenly overcome by nausea or dizziness, as though the oppressive energy of the room presses down on them. One man reported being shoved hard against a wall by unseen hands, leaving bruises that lasted for days. Perhaps the most terrifying tales come from the hospital's old surgical wing. Shadows are said to dart across the walls, even when no light source can explain them. Some visitors have claimed to see full apparitions of men lying on gurneys, their bodies bloodied and broken, eyes wide with pain, before fading into nothing. A chilling detail, repeated by multiple witnesses, is the sound of muffled groaning, like men in agony, echoing through the hall long after the building was abandoned. Travelers passing through Bisbee often say that even from outside, the hospital seems alive. Windows appear to flicker with light at night, as though lanterns or candles are burning inside. Others have spotted figures standing at those same windows, watching silently before disappearing when approached. Local lore also ties the hospital's hauntings to specific tragedies. A mining collapse in the early 1900s reportedly sent dozens of injured men flooding into the wards. Many of them died within hours, their bodies overwhelming the morgue. It's said their spirits never left, bound to the hospital, where their final moments played out in fear and suffering. Even today, some residents claim they can hear the faint, distant sound of coughing, labored breathing, and cries for help drifting from the old building during the quietest hours of the night. The Copper Queen Hospital, in its abandoned state, serves as both a reminder of Bisbee's dangerous past and a living gallery of its ghosts. To step inside is to step into history, a place where the line between the living and the dead is blurred, where the atmosphere is charged with the weight of untold stories. Whether it is the phantom nurse still making her rounds, the shadowy miners haunting the halls, or the echoes of surgeries long since concluded, the hospital continues to breathe with an energy that refuses to die. For some, it is a place to avoid at all costs, a site too deeply soaked in tragedy to visit. For others, it is a magnetic draw, a chance to glimpse the lingering souls of Bisbee's miners and the medical staff who could not save them. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the Copper Queen Hospital is far from silent. It is alive with echoes of the past, and those who enter may find themselves walking alongside the ghosts of Arizona's mining history, in the barren expanse of the Mojave Desert, where silence stretches endlessly across the sands, sits the crumbling remains of the White Hills Asylum. Time has nearly erased its existence, but the foundation and fragments of stone walls still rise from the earth like broken teeth, a reminder of a place that once housed the forgotten and the condemned. Built in the late 1800s, the asylum was deliberately placed in isolation. Officials claimed it was to give patients peace away from the chaos of town life, but locals have always believed the truth was much darker. The location kept the cries of the suffering well away from civilization, and once a person entered its doors, they rarely returned. Stories suggest that White Hills Asylum was less a place of healing than a prison of torment. Early records are scarce, though scattered references in local newspapers from the time speak of lunatics and troubled souls locked away in the desert facility. The treatments of the era were barbaric cold water, submersion, electroshock therapy without sedation, and long-term restraints. Visitors to the ruins claim to feel an overwhelming heaviness in the air, as if the desert itself absorbed decades of anguish and continues to echo it back to anyone who dares trespass. Travelers passing by on lonely desert nights often report hearing screams carried on the wind. They describe the sound as unmistakably human, shrill and agonized, sometimes stretching on for minutes before vanishing as suddenly as it began. Locals tell chilling tales of sitting around campfires nearby and hearing faint weeping in the distance. Some swear they've heard whispers calling out their names, familiar voices of loved ones who were not there. For many, these voices are said to lure people closer to the ruins, as if the asylum itself hungers for new souls to replace those long lost. Paranormal investigators who have braved the site describe an atmosphere unlike any other. Equipment malfunctions are common. Cameras shut off without explanation. Batteries drain in minutes, and audio recordings capture strange voices. One team reported hearing the unmistakable sound of chains dragging across the floor, even though no one else was inside. Another group recorded what seemed like a distorted female voice repeating the words, "Let me go," over and over. The sound faint but chilling. They left abruptly that night, refusing to enter the asylum again. Perhaps the most disturbing reports are of figures seen watching from the broken windows. Witnesses claim these apparitions do not resemble normal ghosts. Their faces appear hollow, their features blurred, as though the desert had sandblasted away their humanity. One explorer described seeing a figure in a hospital gown, its head tilted unnaturally to the side, staring silently from the upper window. When they approached the building, the figure vanished, leaving only the echo of hurried footsteps on the cracked floorboards above. Campers who have stayed overnight near the asylum say the desert seems to shift and change around the ruins. Shadows move unnaturally, stretching across the sand as if alive. Some wake in the night to find their camp eerily silent, the wind gone still, and the sense of being watched pressing down on them. One group of hikers awoke to find strange symbols drawn in the sand around their tent, none of which they had made. They left immediately, never returning. Legends have grown around the White Hills Asylum, some suggesting that the doctors and staff were as cruel as the treatments themselves. Stories claim that patients were chained to walls for days without food or water, their cries ignored until they fell silent. Others whisper that some patients were buried in unmarked graves near the facility, lost to the desert forever. Locals say the spirits of these souls remain, wandering the ruins in endless torment, unable to find peace. Today, the asylum stands as a scar on the desert landscape. Vines and desert plants creep up the sides of the crumbling walls, nature slowly reclaiming the space. Yet despite the decay, the place retains a sinister energy. Those who step inside the ruins describe sudden drops in temperature, the air thick with the scent of rust, and something foul beneath it, like decay that refuses to fade. Some have fled the building after feeling invisible hands brush against their arms, or icy fingers grip their shoulders in the darkness. The White Hills Asylum has become a forbidden place, avoided even by seasoned desert travelers. Those who dare to visit rarely stay long, whether the ruins are truly haunted or merely soaked with the memory of human suffering. One thing is certain: the desert has not forgotten what happened there. Every scream, every whisper, every shadow is a reminder of the horrors endured by those cast aside and left to rot beneath the unforgiving sun. And so, the legend of White Hills Asylum continues to spread, carried on the desert wind. To this day, the ruins stand waiting silent in the daylight, but alive with echoes when night falls. Few dare to venture near, and fewer still return unchanged. For in the Mojave Desert, the cries of the forgotten still call out, desperate for release, and those who hear them may find that the asylum does not let go. So is the Jerome State Hospital in Jerome, Arizona, sits perched on the hillsides of the once booming mining town. Its decaying structure, a grim reminder of a past steeped in both human labor and human suffering. Jerome, long nicknamed the wickedest town in the West for its lawlessness, saloons, and booming mining economy, is known for its colorful land, sometimes deadly history. Within this turbulent town, the state hospital became a sanctuary of sorts, though a sanctuary shadowed by pain and death. Miners injured deep underground were carried here on gurneys, many barely clinging to life, and townsfolk seeking care often found only cold stone walls and the echo of despair. Built in the early 20th century, the hospital was designed to serve the growing population of Jerome and surrounding mining communities. It was considered modern at the time, with long corridors of patient rooms, an operating wing, and wards for men and women alike. Yet, despite its design, the hospital was often overwhelmed by the number of injured miners arriving daily. Accidents in the mine's cave-ins, explosions, and equipment failures were frequent and severe. Nurses worked tirelessly, moving from patient to patient, trying to save lives with limited resources and rudimentary medical knowledge. But death was an omnipresent visitor, hovering in the hallways, and many of those who entered never left. Over the decades, the hospital closed and fell into disrepair, leaving its stone walls, iron gates, and long, empty corridors to weather the elements. Yet, while the building is abandoned, it is far from lifeless. Visitors and paranormal enthusiasts report strange occurrences almost immediately upon entering the grounds. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the sound of metal clanging in the halls, eerily reminiscent of mining tools striking rock. Some have described it as rhythmic, like miners still working underground, while others say it comes as sudden, random bangs that echo unnervingly in the empty wards. The sounds are often so vivid that people have fled the building, convinced someone or something is moving unseen within the shadows. The presence of spectral figures adds another layer of fear. Many have reported seeing a nurse in white wandering the hallways, holding an old-fashioned lantern that flickers with an unearthly light. Witnesses say she moves deliberately, checking on invisible patients or pausing to write on a clipboard that no one else can see. Those who have attempted to approach her describe an overwhelming sensation of cold and often feel a pressure at their chest, as though the air itself resists their presence. The nurse's figure never speaks, yet her presence is profoundly tangible, a lingering imprint of the hospital's human history. Perhaps the most disturbing reports involve the apparition of a headless miner, said to wander the hospital grounds at night. Legends suggest that this miner lost his head in a catastrophic cave-in during the early mining days and was carried to the hospital in a final attempt to save him. He did not survive, and locals claim his spirit roams the property in search of the body that was never recovered. Witnesses describe seeing a large, shadowy figure with no head, trudging slowly through overgrown grounds, pausing as if sensing someone nearby, only to vanish when approached, as if the miner's presence has brushed past them unseen. Inside the abandoned wards, the air is heavy with a palpable tension. Floors creak, doors groan on rusted hinges, and the faint echo of distant footsteps seems to follow visitors. Paranormal teams who have investigated the hospital report EVP recordings filled with faint whispers, fragmented cries, and what sounds like a miner's groaning under the weight of rock. Some recordings even include voices saying, "Help, can't find it," interpreted by many as a desperate search of the headless miner for his lost body. Others report hearing the shuffle of shoes across broken tiles, sudden thuds, or the metallic scrape of unseen machinery, all adding to the eerie atmosphere. The surrounding desert hills seem to amplify the hospital's haunting energy. At night, the wind carries strange echoes, and distant lights soar orbs as some believe appear to hover over the grounds. Those who have camped near the ruins speak of being awakened by whispers in their tents, soft but insistent, calling out names or urging them toward the hospital's silhouette. Some report seeing figures silhouetted in windows, the flicker of lantern light inside empty rooms, or shadows darting along walls that no longer contain anyone. Despite its notoriety, the Jerome State Hospital continues to draw curious visitors, ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and history enthusiasts alike. For many, the allure lies in the combination of its tragic history and the persistent tales of paranormal activity. Walking through the empty halls, one can almost imagine the bustling corridors of the past. Miners wheeled in on gurneys, nurses hurrying between rooms, and the constant, low hum of a community bound by labor and loss. But the echoes are darker now. They are the sounds of lingering spirits, trapped by trauma, unresolved death, and the relentless passage of time. The hospital is more than an abandoned building. It is a vessel for memory and suffering. Every shadow, every metallic clang, every fleeting glimpse of a figure in the darkness serves as a reminder of the lives that intersected with this place, and the tragedies that never fully ended. For those who enter, the Jerome State Hospital is not merely a relic of the past, it is a haunting experience, a place where the living and the dead briefly coexist, and where the echoes of a town once called the wickedest refuse to be silenced. For the brave, the curious, or the foolhardy, the hospital offers a chilling journey into history. Every creaking door, every whispered cry, and every flickering shadow tells the story of miners, nurses, and patients whose lives ended here, but whose spirits linger on. And in the desert hills of Jerome, their presence remains, waiting for anyone willing to step inside and bear witness to the echoes of the past. The Casa Grande Tuberculosis Hospital, nestled in the sweltering heat of Arizona's desert, is a place where the past refuses to rest. Built during the height of the tuberculosis epidemic in the early 20th century, it was designed as a sanctuary for those battling the deadly disease. Families sent their loved ones here, hoping the dry desert air and medical care would offer a chance at survival. Yet, for many, the hospital became a final destination rather than a place of healing. Patients coughed their last breaths into the sterile halls, their bodies wasting away while the desert sun beat down on the building's walls, indifferent to their suffering. The architecture, once considered modern and hopeful, now stands as a crumbling testament to loss. Its brick and concrete walls have cracked and faded, paint peels in long strips, and the windows stare blankly into the desert, as if empty eyes watching over the dead. Rusted metal beds sit in abandoned wards, and the remnants of medical equipment lie scattered, corroded by time. Despite its decay, the building exudes an energy that is hard to ignore, a heavy, suffocating presence that seems to linger in the air like the disease it once contained. Visitors to the hospital often report a sense of dread the moment they cross the threshold. The desert air, already oppressive in summer, feels heavier inside, thick with an almost tangible tension. Some describe the smell of stale disinfectant mixed with something far more sinister, an odor of decay that refuses to fade. It is no wonder that explorers entering the building speak of hearing the echoing sounds of labored breathing and coughing, even though no one else is present. The sounds are faint at first, almost imperceptible, but grow louder as one moves through the corridors, following them from ward to ward. One of the most persistent apparitions reported is that of a woman in a hospital gown, pale and gaunt, clutching her chest as though her lungs are failing. Witnesses claim she wanders the halls silently, moving from room to room, sometimes appearing at the end of a corridor and vanishing when approached. Some say she appears near the beds where patients once lay, kneeling or bending over them, as if tending to someone long gone. Those who encounter her describe an overwhelming sense of despair, a feeling so heavy it presses on the chest, making it difficult to breathe. Many leave the hospital shaken, convinced that the disease itself lingers in the air, invisible but potent. The hospital's wards, once filled with rows of beds, are now silent but for the occasional groan of collapsing floorboards and the whistle of wind through broken windows. Shadows move unnaturally across the walls, often glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, and are gone when looked at directly. Some explorers report doors slamming of their own accord, though the old hinges barely function. And certain rooms are said to grow inexplicably cold, despite the desert heat outside. Paranormal investigators have captured recordings of coughing, wheezing, and faint whispers, though playback reveals no one was present to produce them. Visitors also describe a sense of time distortion. It is said that one can spend mere minutes inside the building, but emerge feeling as though hours have passed. Some report disorientation, sudden dizziness, or an urge to leave immediately. A few explorers have recounted hallucinations, fleeting glimpses of figures in tattered clothing, pale and shivering. These experiences are often accompanied by a crushing emotional weight, a pervasive sadness that clings to every surface of the building. Stories from the local community add another layer to the hospital's haunted reputation. Decades ago, families would occasionally see strange figures in the distance, walking along the edges of the hospital grounds, sometimes moving toward the building only to vanish when approached. Some children claimed they saw faces pressed against the windows, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. Elderly residents insist that the hospital's presence is more than a relic. They believe it harbors the energy of the countless souls who perished there, trapped by disease and despair, unable to move on. The Casa Grande Tuberculosis Hospital also holds a unique kind of terror for those who linger too long. Several visitors have reported feelings of suffocation, as if the air inside is laced with the disease itself. The sensation can become so overwhelming that one struggles to inhale. Some have fled in panic, only to find the oppressive sensation dissipates once they leave the building's shadow. Those who remain insist that the feeling is not imagined. It is the lingering presence of suffering, etched into the walls, beds, and corridors by those who lived and died there. Even in decay, the hospital retains traces of its past life. Rusted wheelchairs, scattered medical charts, and broken thermometers serve as stark reminders of the countless patients who once occupied the space. Yet it is the unseen that terrifies most. The echoes of coughs in empty halls, the flickering glimpses of a woman in a hospital gown, the whispering voices that call out names in the darkness. These are the remnants of human suffering left behind, memories that refuse to fade with the sun or the passage of time. The Casa Grande Tuberculosis Hospital is more than just an abandoned building. It's a mausoleum of human fragility and the relentless power of disease. Those who enter may feel history pressing down upon them, a chilling reminder that even in death, the desert remembers. The stories of coughing patients, spectral nurses, and the suffocating air are passed down among locals and thrill-seekers alike, solidifying the hospital's reputation as one of Arizona's most haunted locations. For the brave or the curious, stepping inside the ruins is an encounter with both history and the supernatural. Every echo, shadow, and sigh seems to carry the weight of those who suffered and perished there. And for anyone who dares linger in the deserted halls, the message is clear. The Casa Grande Tuberculosis Hospital may be abandoned, but its spirits remain, bound to the building and the desert that claimed them. waiting to remind the living of the lives lost within its walls. The Superior Mining Hospital in Superior, Arizona, stands as a grim relic of a bygone era. Its hollowed halls a silent witness to the dangers of life in the copper and gold mines that once fueled the town. Built to care for miners injured in the unforgiving depths of the earth, the hospital was once a place of both hope and desperation. Families would bring their loved ones here after mining accidents, falls, explosions, and equipment mishaps, often leaving men mangled or burned. Despite the best efforts of the hospital staff, many never left alive, their final moments spent amid the sterile yet chaotic wards. Today, the building is a decaying shell of its former self. Roofs have collapsed, windows are shattered, and the walls are scarred by weather and time. Rusted beds lie strewn across the floor, some tipped on their sides, and remnants of surgical equipment cling stubbornly to corroded cabinets. Yet, despite the ruin, the hospital remains unnervingly alive to those who venture inside, its walls saturated with the echoes of past suffering. The air inside is thick and heavy, carrying a tangible sense of despair, as if the hospital itself has absorbed the agony of decades of miners brought in with broken bodies and broken spirits. The stories of ghostly activity at the Superior Mining Hospital are numerous, chilling, and consistent. Locals tell of phantom screams emanating from the old emergency room, where miners crushed by cave-ins or burned by furnace explosions were brought in for treatment. The screams are described as sharp, agonizing, and horrifyingly human, often rising and falling without warning. Drivers passing the hospital at night claim to hear faint cries carried across the desert wind, compelling some to stop their cars in uneasy curiosity. Those who linger, however, rarely stay long, overcome by the oppressive atmosphere. Paranormal investigators have explored the abandoned hospital, documenting experiences that defy explanation. Using recording equipment and EVP devices, they have captured the voice of a man screaming, "Help me!" followed by an abrupt silence, as though the soul behind the voice vanished instantly. In some instances, investigators report hearing the sounds of shuffling feet on tile floors, long since cracked, or the metallic clang of surgical tools dropping to the ground. The phenomena are often concentrated in the ER and the surgical wings, areas where miners were treated for the most severe injuries. Some visitors have described seeing shadowy figures moving through the collapsed hallways, appearing to relive the moments of their deaths. These spirits are not gentle or guiding. Many witnesses describe them as angry, tormented, and restless. A former paramedic who explored the building reported seeing a man in tattered hospital garments, blackened skin, and soot-streaked face, wandering the corridor with an expression of eternal pain. When approached, the figure recoiled violently, slamming into walls before disappearing entirely. Others have experienced sudden slaps, scratches, or sensations of being grabbed in seen hands, communicating the rage and frustration of miners who died in agony and remained tethered to the place. The hospital's exterior is no less unnerving. Broken windows offer glimpses of empty wards, yet some visitors swear they see figures standing silently behind the glass, staring outward with hollow, accusing eyes. At night, the building takes on an almost sentient presence. Lights of passing vehicles are reflected in broken panes, giving the illusion of movement within, while the wind through shattered walls carries faint echoes of groans and whispers. Hikers and locals alike claim to have felt a pressure against their chests when approaching the ruins, as though the suffering contained within is pressing outward, demanding acknowledgement. Inside the emergency room, the heart of the hospital's hauntings remains particularly active in the stories of explorers. The ER was where crushed and burned miners were brought in from the mines, often already beyond saving. Witnesses speak of sudden temperature drops, the metallic scent of blood in the air, and the feeling of being watched from every direction. Some have reported seeing fleeting images of miners on gurneys, their bodies contorted in pain, faces twisted in terror. Others describe hearing the faint echo of a nurse's voice calling out instructions, only to realize no one else is present. The haunting here feels cyclical, a replay of the hospital's darkest moments that refuses to end. The Superior Mining Hospital is also known for the emotional impact it leaves on those who enter. Visitors often report feelings of dread, anxiety, and sorrow that grow heavier the longer they stay. Some explorers have emerged from the building shaking, nauseous, or unable to speak for hours. Many insist that the spirits of the miners are not merely restless, they are trapped in their final moments of suffering, replaying the pain and fear over and over, and anyone who enters is forced to bear witness to it. Local legend warns that the spirits can be vengeful. Trespassers have reported unexplained injuries, sudden bruises, and scratches that appear without explanation. Some believe these are warnings, manifestations of anger from souls still tied to the building, their deaths violent and unresolved. Others interpret the hauntings as cries for recognition, desperate reminders that the miners who died here are not forgotten and will not allow their suffering to be ignored. Despite the decay and danger, the Superior Mining Hospital continues to attract explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. For many, it is the combination of historical tragedy and supernatural mystery that draws them in. Walking through its ruined corridors is a harrowing experience, one where the line between the living and the dead blurs. Every echo, shadow, and unexplained sound serves as a reminder of the countless miners who once passed through its doors, many of whom never left. The Superior Mining Hospital is not just a relic of Arizona's mining past, it is a monument to suffering, a place where human pain has left a permanent mark on the earth and the air. Those who enter may feel the rage, despair, and desperation of the miners pressing against them, a chilling reminder that some spirits are too angry, too wounded, or too restless to move on. And in the deserts of Superior, under the relentless sun and the wide, silent sky, the hospital waits patiently, holding the echoes of the past and the restless cries of those who died within its walls. Deep within the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, surrounded by cracked desert earth and twisted mesquite trees, stands the crumbling remains of the Phoenix Asylum. Once a sprawling complex of red brick buildings and barred windows, it now slumps into the dust like a forgotten secret. Opened in 1912 with promises of reform and humane care, the institution quickly became a place of silence, suffering, and unmarked graves. At its peak, the asylum housed over 800 patients in a facility designed for half that number. Cots were crammed into hallways. Patients slept on concrete floors. The staff, underpaid and overwhelmed, resorted to sedation, restraint, and neglect. Medical records were poorly kept, if at all. Names were lost. Families were told their loved ones had been transferred only, to later discover no such transfer existed. Some patients simply vanished. Whispers began almost as soon as the first wing opened. Nurses spoke of screams that echoed from empty rooms. Orderlies claimed they saw figures in hospital gowns standing at the ends of dark corridors, only to vanish when approached. The most chilling stories came from the East Wing, the so-called quiet ward, where the most disturbed patients were kept in isolation. It was said that during thunderstorms, the lights in that wing would flicker, even after the power was shut off decades ago. In 1954, a fire broke out in the basement, allegedly caused by faulty wiring. The blaze spread quickly, consuming 2 floors before being extinguished. 12 patients died that night. Official reports claimed they were trapped due to locked doors meant to prevent escapes. No staff were held accountable. The investigation was closed within a week. The dead were buried in a mass grave behind the facility, marked only by numbered stones. By the 1970s, investigations into mental health institutions across the country began to expose widespread abuse. Former employees of the Phoenix Asylum came forward with disturbing accounts of ice baths used to calm patients, of electroshock treatments administered without anesthesia, of patients who were never ill at all, but had been committed by families seeking to hide shame or avoid responsibility. One nurse recalled a man who spoke only in poetry, who wrote verses on the walls in his own blood before disappearing overnight. His file, like so many others, was never found. The asylum was officially closed in 1983. The remaining patients were transferred to modern facilities, though many were left with lifelong trauma. The buildings were abandoned, left to the elements and the vandals. Windows were shattered. Graffiti covered the walls. Nature began its slow reclamation. But those who venture near Bonn, explorers, ghost hunters, curious locals, say the asylum is not truly empty. On still desert nights, voices can be heard drifting from the broken windows. Some claim to see flickering lights in the upper floors. Others report the sensation of being watched, of cold breath on the back of the neck, of hands brushing against their arms when no one is there. One persistent legend speaks of a woman in a white gown who walks the halls at midnight. She carries a rusted key and hums a lullaby in a language no one recognizes. Some believe she was a nurse who tried to help patients escape during the fire, only to be locked inside by her superiors. Others say she was a young woman committed for hysteria after refusing an arranged marriage. Her file, too, is missing. In 2007, a crew filming a documentary on abandoned hospitals reported equipment failure and audio recordings of whispering in multiple languages. One clip, later analyzed, contained a voice saying, "We're still here." The footage was never aired. The city has considered demolishing the asylum, but each attempt meets resistance, first from preservationists, then from strange accidents. Bulldozers break down. Contractors report nightmares. One worker claimed a patient in a tattered uniform stood beside him and said, "Don't wake them." Today, the gates remain chained, the signs warning of trespassing and structural collapse. But the wind still carries echoes through the hollow halls, and sometimes, if you listen closely on a quiet night, you can hear the faint sound of footsteps, slow, uneven, pacing the same corridor they've walked for over a century. The Nogales Border Hospital, perched near the Arizona-Mexico border, is a relic of a past where life and death intertwined under harsh conditions and political tension. Constructed in the early 20th century, it served as a treatment center for border workers, military personnel, and travelers injured or sick along the frontier. At the time, it was considered essential for maintaining order and health in a volatile region. Yet the hospital's history was marked by tragedy, disease, war, injuries, and the relentless desert heat claimed the lives of countless patients, leaving behind a building that was once full of care and hope, now silent and decaying. Abandoned decades ago, the hospital has not been forgotten. Locals and travelers alike speak of the building in hushed tones, warning that it is haunted by the suffering of those who died within its walls. Broken windows gape like empty eyes over crumbling walls, and the rusted gates swing in the desert wind, producing a sound reminiscent of distant moans. Inside, the corridors are long and shadowed, echoing with every footstep, making even the faintest movement feel amplified. The atmosphere is heavy, charged with an energy that seems to grow stronger as night falls. One of the most persistent legends involves the sounds of Spanish voices echoing through the abandoned halls. Witnesses describe hearing cries for help, often in rapid, desperate bursts, as if the voices are trapped between life and death. Some say the voices call out names or plead for water and comfort, while others are unintelligible, more like moans of pain and anguish. Paranormal teams who have investigated the building report capturing these sounds on audio devices. And in many cases, the recordings reveal voices that were not present when the team was on site, leaving them convinced the hospital is still populated by restless spirits. Apparitions are another common phenomenon reported at Nogales. Visitors have claimed to see soldiers, their uniforms tattered and faces pale, wandering the halls. Many appear to have missing limbs, their injuries frozen in the moment of death. These figures are often seen hobbling slowly, as if burdened by both pain and purpose, before vanishing into walls or disappearing when approached. Witnesses describe feeling sudden chills, the sensation of cold fingers brushing their arms, or an overwhelming sense of dread whenever these apparitions appear. Some have even claimed that the soldiers seem aware of the living, pausing to look directly at intruders before fading into the darkness. Perhaps the most unnerving reports involve the unmistakable sound of boots marching in unison. Paranormal teams and explorers alike have described hearing the rhythmic clanging of heavy military boots echoing down long corridors. The sound moves from room to room, up stairwells, and through empty wards. Yet when the investigators search for the source, the hallways remain empty. The marching often comes in sudden bursts, followed by eerie silence, leaving visitors tense and anxious. The repetitive cadence of the steps is unnerving, a reminder of the military presence that once defined the hospital and the suffering that accompanied it. The hospital's wards are particularly haunted in reputation. Once filled with beds and medical equipment for the sick and injured, they are now littered with debris, rusted gurneys, and shattered tiles. Explorers report feeling sudden shifts in temperature, often accompanied by the sensation of being watched. Some describe the air thickening as they move through certain rooms, as if invisible hands press against their shoulders or chest. Shadows flicker along walls, sometimes forming shapes that resemble soldiers or patients, only to vanish when the flashlight is directed at them. The building itself seems to react to the presence of living intruders, intensifying the sense of unease. Locals speak of a specific wing of the hospital as especially haunted: the old surgical and triage areas. This is where soldiers injured in border skirmishes and workers caught in industrial accidents were treated. According to stories, many did not survive the procedures, and some were left undocumented. Visitors to this wing often report hearing surgical tools clattered to the ground, faint voices arguing, or whispered orders in Spanish. Some claim to see figures crouched over beds, performing tasks long abandoned, while others feel cold breaths on their necks as though someone or something is observing them closely. The exterior of the Nogales Border Hospital also adds to its chilling reputation. Desert winds whip through broken gates and shattered windows, carrying faint echoes that sound like distant screams. Some travelers swear they see shadowy figures moving behind the walls at night, or glowing eyes peering from darkened windows. The combination of isolation, dilapidation, and history has created a space where fear is almost tangible. And even seasoned explorers report unease when approaching the building after dark. Despite its danger and ominous reputation, the hospital continues to attract paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and urban explorers. For many, the allure lies in its mix of history, tragedy, and unexplained phenomena. Walking through the hallways, one can almost sense the hospital's past: the groans of the injured, the frantic footsteps of nurses, and the haunting echoes of military discipline and suffering. Every corner seems to contain a memory, every shadow a story, every whisper a plea. The Nogales Border Hospital is more than an abandoned building. It is a monument to lives lost and pain endured. The voices, apparitions, and unexplained sounds serve as chilling reminders of the human cost embedded in its walls. Those who enter the ruins may feel watched, followed, or even directly confronted by the spirits that linger, their presence as undeniable as it is terrifying. In the desert outskirts of Nogales, the hospital remains a site where the past refuses to rest, and where anyone who dares to step inside can witness the echoes of suffering, the shadows of soldiers, and the whispers of the forgotten. The Gila County Insane Ward, located in Globe, Arizona, is a place where the echoes of suffering refuse to fade. Once part of the town's medical facilities, this asylum wing was designed to house and care for the mentally ill, but instead became a chamber of torment. Constructed in the early 1900s, the ward was intended as a sanctuary, yet historical records and first-hand accounts paint a grim picture of neglect, abuse, and cruelty. Overcrowding, inadequate staffing, and outdated treatment methods meant that patients were often chained to their beds or walls, left unattended for days, and sometimes left to die in silence. The building itself, though abandoned, still carries the weight of its dark history. Its stone and brick walls are cracked and weathered, windows either broken or boarded over, and the roof has partially collapsed in several sections. Rusted metal bars and corroded bed frames remain scattered throughout the halls, relics of the inhumane methods once employed within, even in daylight. The atmosphere is oppressive, but as night falls, the ward seems to awaken, and the energy of its tortured past manifests in ways that have left many visitors shaken. One of the most commonly reported phenomena in the Gila County Insane Ward is the sound of chains dragging across the floor. Explorers and paranormal investigators frequently describe hearing heavy, metallic clinks echoing through empty corridors, as though patients who have long since died are still restrained and pacing. The sounds appear to move from room to room, sometimes stopping abruptly, only to begin again elsewhere, giving the unnerving impression that unseen figures are actively walking the halls. These noises are particularly pronounced in the old cell blocks, where patients were once confined for prolonged periods. Shadowy apparitions are also a frequent occurrence. Visitors have reported fleeting glimpses of figures crouching in corners, standing silently at the end of hallways, or crawling across walls in grotesque, unnatural ways. Some witnesses describe seeing tall, thin shapes that move with jerky, deliberate motions, as though struggling against invisible bonds. These figures are often indistinct, vanishing when approached or when light is shown directly upon them, leaving only the lingering impression of their presence. The movements of these specters are so unnerving that even the most experienced urban explorers have fled from the ward in fear. Another disturbing phenomenon involves the appearance of handprints smeared in dust on walls and furniture. Visitors often enter rooms that were empty moments before to find clear impressions of palms or fingers pressed against dusty surfaces. Some handprints appear to reach out, elongated as if the hands themselves were desperate to grasp someone alive. Paranormal teams have documented these prints forming seemingly spontaneously, appearing even after rooms have been cleaned or sealed. Many interpret them as residual energy from patients who suffered confinement and neglect, attempting to leave a trace of their existence on the world of the living. The sensation of being touched or restrained is another hallmark of the ward's haunting. Several explorers recount moments when invisible hands seem to grip their throats, shoulders, or arms, producing an intense feeling of pressure and panic. Some report sudden pushes or pulls while navigating darkened hallways, accompanied by the unmistakable sensation of a presence pressing in from all sides. These experiences often coincide with inexplicable drops in temperature, flickering lights, or distant moans, amplifying the fear and disorientation of those who enter. Auditory phenomena are pervasive throughout the Gila County Insane Ward. Whispered voices, sometimes unintelligible but often clearly pleading for help, echo through abandoned rooms and corridors. Visitors report hearing moans, wails, and cries for mercy, along with faint, fragmented conversations as though the spirits are replaying moments from their lives. Some explorers have captured these sounds on recording devices, and many describe the experience as deeply unsettling, a direct connection to the suffering that once defined the ward. The ward's architecture contributes to the haunting atmosphere. Narrow corridors, low ceilings, and heavy doors create a sense of confinement, even for the living. Every footstep, creak, or gust of wind seems amplified, bouncing off walls and producing echoes that mimic human movement. Broken windows cast jagged shadows on floors and walls, often creating the illusion of figures standing or moving just beyond the edge of sight. The combination of physical decay and the imprint of past trauma produces a setting in which fear can grow rapidly, consuming the senses of those who venture inside. Local lore reinforces the ward's reputation as a place of terror. Longtime residents of Globe recall stories passed down through generations about patients who disappeared without record, chained for days or weeks, their deaths often unacknowledged. Some claim that certain rooms are cursed, their energies so malevolent that even the bravest investigators have left abruptly. Others insist that the ward is inhabited not just by the spirits of patients, but also by the echoes of former staff, some of whom were said to have been cruel or abusive, their anger and resentment lingering alongside the suffering of those they mistreated. Despite the dangers and reputation, the Gila County Insane Ward continues to attract explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. The building offers a chilling glimpse into a dark chapter of medical and social history, where human lives were devalued and pain was institutionalized. Those who enter the ward often emerge profoundly affected, reporting lingering unease, nightmares, and the unmistakable sense that the spirits of the past remain close, watching and remembering. The Gila County Insane Ward is not simply an abandoned building. It is a repository of human suffering, a place where anguish and neglect have left indelible marks on the physical and spiritual landscape. Every creaking floorboard, every dragging chain, every shadow in the corners of a hallway serves as a reminder of the lives trapped within its walls. For those who step inside, the experience is both historical and supernatural, a confrontation with the unresolved pain of the past. In Globe's desolate outskirts, the ward stands as a testament to human cruelty and endurance. The echoes of chains, the handprints in dust, the invisible hands that grip and push all, are proof that some suffering never truly ends. And in the darkness of the abandoned asylum wing, those who dare to enter come face to face with the restless spirits of the Gila County Insane Ward, bound forever to a place where the living feared to tread and the dead refused to be forgotten. The Fort Grant Military Hospital, situated on the outskirts of Arizona's desert, is a relic of a bygone era when soldiers came here seeking treatment for battle wounds, infectious diseases, and aware of harsh military life. Constructed in the late 19th century as part of the Fort Grant military complex, the hospital was designed to serve troops stationed in the region, providing care for injuries sustained in skirmishes and long marches, as well as outbreaks of disease that were common in the isolated outpost. Despite its purpose as a place of healing, the hospital quickly gained a reputation for tragedy, as countless soldiers succumbed to infections, untreated injuries, or the unforgiving desert environment. Today, the Fort Grant Military Hospital stands abandoned, a crumbling structure of sun-bleached brick and rusted iron, its windows shattered and ceilings partially collapsed. The building's isolation in the desert amplifies its eerie presence, and visitors often describe a sense of heaviness upon approaching, as if the very air carries the weight of the lives lost within its walls. The desert wind whistles through broken doorways and overgrown corridors, producing sounds that are unsettlingly human groans, whispers, and echoes that seem to replay the hospital's tragic history. Among the most persistent reports from those who dare to explore the ruins are sightings of uniformed soldiers marching through the halls. Witnesses describe figures in faded military attire, sometimes with rifles slung over their shoulders, moving in precise formations as though rehearsing a drill frozen in time. These apparitions are often observed in the long, shadowed corridors, where the rhythm of marching steps echoes unnaturally across the walls. When approached, the figures vanish abruptly, leaving only the faint impression of their presence and the sound of boots softly clattering on the floor. Phantom gunfire is another chilling phenomenon associated with Fort Grant. Explorers have reported sudden, sharp cracks of shots ringing through empty wards, followed by an eerie silence. Sometimes, the sound of musket or rifle fire is accompanied by muffled cries of pain, distant yet unnervingly close, as though the soldiers themselves are reliving their final moments over and over again. Paranormal teams have captured these sounds on audio devices, often when no one else was present, reinforcing the belief that the building remains haunted by the trauma of its military past. One of the most unsettling auditory phenomena involves the sound of a bugle playing taps at midnight. Multiple visitors have reported hearing the mournful notes echoing through the abandoned halls, the melody sorrowful and slow, carrying the weight of loss. The sound often comes without warning, seemingly emanating from the central courtyard or upper floors, fading into the desert night as suddenly as it begins. For those present, the experience is profoundly unnerving, as though the spirits of the fallen soldiers are being honored or mourned by the echoes of their own history. The interior of the hospital, though dilapidated, remains a magnet for unexplained activity. Rusted beds, toppled gurneys, and broken medical equipment litter the wards, serving as grim reminders of the lives once treated and lost there. Some visitors report seeing shadowy figures kneeling over empty beds or standing silently at the end of hallways, their faces pale and hollow. In certain rooms, the temperature can drop dramatically, leaving explorers shivering despite the desert heat outside. The air often feels heavy and oppressive, as if the building itself is pressing down, insisting that its past not be forgotten. Many paranormal investigators describe feelings of being followed or watched, especially in the surgical and recovery wards. Some have felt invisible hands graze their shoulders or the back of their necks, while others report sudden, unprovoked chills and a sense of suffocating pressure. The combination of physical decay and lingering emotional energy creates a highly charged environment, where even minor noises, a creaking floorboard or a gust of wind can trigger intense fear and the sensation that unseen eyes are tracking every movement. Local lore adds another layer of fear and fascination to Fort Grant Military Hospital. Residents of the surrounding area tell stories of soldiers who never left the hospital alive, their spirits lingering to reenact the pain and discipline of military life. Some speak of phantom drills taking place in the moonlight, with figures marching silently across the courtyard or along the hallways. Others warn of hearing screams or cries for help carried on the wind, originating from areas long since sealed off. These accounts, passed down over decades, have cemented the hospital's reputation as one of Arizona's most haunted military sites. The hospital's architecture amplifies the unsettling experience. Long, narrow corridors create unnatural echoes, while high ceilings in the wards allow even faint sounds to reverberate unnaturally. Broken windows cast fragmented beams of moonlight onto debris-strewn floors, creating shadows that seem to move with a life of their own. Visitors frequently describe moments of disorientation, where distances appear distorted, hallways stretch endlessly, and shadowy shapes flicker just beyond the edge of perception. Despite, or perhaps because of its reputation, the Fort Grant Military Hospital continues to attract explorers, ghost hunters, and historians. The combination of historical significance, tragic deaths, and consistent reports of paranormal activity creates an irresistible allure. Walking through the ruined halls is an encounter with history and the supernatural simultaneously, a place where echoes of the past insist on being heard. Every footstep, every creak, and every whisper carries the memory of soldiers who lived and died under the unforgiving conditions of the desert. The Fort Grant Military Hospital is more than an abandoned building. It is a monument to loss, duty, and the lingering impact of death. The sounds of marching boots, phantom gunfire, muffled cries, and the haunting bugle of taps serve as reminders that the past refuses to remain silent. Those who enter the hospital may feel the weight of history pressing down on them. Confronted by the spirits of soldiers who died within its walls, their presence as undeniable as it is terrifying. In the quiet desert outskirts of Fort Grant, the hospital waits, a decaying sentinel of human suffering and military tragedy. Its ruins hold memories, echoes, and restless spirits, ensuring that anyone who dares to step inside will not simply explore a building, they will encounter the lingering shadows of those who gave their lives here. Bound forever to the halls of the Fort Grant Military Hospital, the Prescott Sanatorium, nestled in the pine-covered hills of Prescott, Arizona, is a haunting reminder of a bygone era when tuberculosis ravaged the American West. Built in the early 20th century, the sanatorium was designed to provide care for patients suffering from the disease, offering rest, fresh air, and medical treatment in an age before antibiotics could offer a cure. Despite its intentions, the institution quickly became synonymous with death and despair. Hundreds of patients arrived with hopes of recovery, yet many would leave only in coffins, their final days spent among the echoes of suffering and fear. Abandoned for decades, the Prescott Sanatorium now stands as a decaying shell. Its once bright walls are faded and peeling, windows shattered or boarded over, and rusted beds and medical equipment litter the halls. The building's isolation in the hills enhances its eerie atmosphere, and even in daylight, the air seems heavy with the weight of memories. Those who venture inside describe a palpable presence, as if the walls themselves are infused with the anguish of the countless patients who suffered and died within. One of the most common reports from visitors is the sound of wheelchairs moving across the tile floors. Despite the absence of any living occupants, the scraping and squeaking of wheels echoes down hallways, often stopping suddenly when someone approaches. Explorers describe the sensation of being followed by unseen forces, hearing wheels roll behind them or to the side, only to discover empty corridors when they turn. Some believe these sounds are the echoes of patients who never left, forever trapped in the routine of their daily confinement. Shadowy figures are another frequent phenomenon. Witnesses report glimpses of nurses walking along the corridors, their movements precise yet ethereal. Some appear to be tending to empty beds, while others drift silently, vanishing when approached. The figures are often described as pale and indistinct, their outlines flickering in the light, but their presence is undeniable. Visitors sometimes feel sudden chills or the sensation of being watched as these apparitions pass, leaving behind an unsettling awareness of unseen eyes. Among the most terrifying experiences reported at the Prescott Sanatorium is the appearance of a phantom doctor. Descriptions are chilling and consistent. A tall figure in an old-fashioned medical coat, holding surgical tools stained with dark, indiscernible matter. He is often seen at the foot of beds, standing silently and observing, before disappearing without a trace. Those who have encountered him describe a sense of intense dread, as though the presence itself is a warning, a residue of the countless deaths he oversaw. Paranormal investigators note that encounters with this figure often coincide with sudden drops in temperature, unexplained noises, and the eerie feeling of pressure in the chest. Auditory phenomena are pervasive throughout the sanatorium. Visitors have reported whispers, cries, and groans that seem to drift from empty rooms. Some claim to hear coughing, labored and rhythmic, echoing down hallways that have long been stripped of life. Others have caught fragments of conversations or murmurs, as if the spirits of former patients are replaying their final interactions, frozen in time. Paranormal teams, equipped with recording devices, have captured sounds that defy explanation, voices and footsteps occurring when no one else was present. The architecture of the Prescott Sanatorium amplifies its haunting atmosphere. Long corridors, high ceilings, and open wards create natural echoes, making even minor noises feel magnified and unnatural. Broken windows allow moonlight to cast shifting shadows across floors and walls, producing fleeting images that can resemble figures moving in the distance. Visitors report moments of disorientation, where hallways seem to stretch endlessly or bend unexpectedly, and shadows appear to flicker with a life of their own. The building's decaying paint, collapsing ceilings, and scattered debris adds to the sense of instability and unpredictability, keeping explorers on edge at every step. Certain rooms within the sanatorium are reputedly more active than others. The former surgical wards and patient rooms, where countless lives were lost, are often the sites of the most intense paranormal activity. Here, the sounds of medical equipment clattering, chairs moving, and footsteps are most commonly reported. Some explorers have felt sudden, invisible touches, or the sensation of being pulled or pressed as they navigate these spaces. The combination of auditory and tactile experiences makes these areas particularly unnerving, as if the building itself is asserting its presence on anyone who enters. Local lore reinforces the reputation of the Prescott Sanatorium as one of Arizona's most haunted sites. Residents tell stories of patients who were never allowed to leave, succumbing to disease in lonely rooms. Some speak of nurses and doctors who disappeared mysteriously, their spirits rumored to remain behind, to tend to the living, or to relive the routines of their work. These accounts, passed down over generations, add a layer of historical context to the supernatural phenomena reported, connecting the building's tragic past to its present hauntings. Despite the risks and the reputation, the Prescott Sanatorium continues to attract urban explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. Many are drawn by the combination of historical significance, lingering energy, and the chance to witness the unexplained firsthand. Walking through the empty halls is an experience that merges history with horror, where every creak, groan, and whisper serves as a reminder of the lives once contained within these walls. The Prescott Sanatorium is more than a derelict building. It is a repository of human suffering, a place where the anguish of the past clings to the present. The sounds of wheelchairs, shadowy figures of nurses, and the ghostly doctor with his surgical tools are chilling reminders that some pain does not fade with time. Those who enter the sanatorium may leave with an indelible impression of the building's haunted legacy, a sensation that the spirits of the past are still very much present, watching, waiting, and replaying the final moments of countless lives lost to disease and despair. The Tempe Mental Health Facility, a small but infamous institution in Tempe, Arizona, sits abandoned on the outskirts of the city, shrouded in decay and whispered stories of tragedy. Built in the early 20th century, the facility was designed to care for individuals struggling with mental illness, offering treatment in an era when understanding of psychiatric conditions was rudimentary at best. Despite its modest size, the institution quickly gained a reputation for harsh treatment methods, overcrowding, and neglect. By the mid-1900s, funding collapsed, the building was shuttered, and patients were reportedly transferred to other facilities. Yet locals insist that not all of the patients ever left, and that their suffering has imprinted itself upon the walls, floors, and air of the facility. Visitors to the Tempe Mental Health Facility often describe a sense of unease before even stepping inside. The building's exterior, long faded and weathered by Arizona's harsh sun, features broken windows, peeling paint, and rusted gates that creak in the wind. The surrounding grounds are overgrown with weeds and thorny desert brush, creating a natural barrier that discourages casual visitors. Even during the day, the air feels heavy and charged, as though the building is aware of intruders, waiting for them to step across the threshold. Once inside, the facility's corridors evoke a profound sense of abandonment and fear. Peeling walls, crumbling ceilings, and warped floors hint at years of neglect. But the history of suffering seems almost tangible. Some explorers report hearing faint footsteps echoing down empty hallways, doors opening and closing on their own, and whispers that drift just out of comprehension. The sounds are often sudden and disorienting, giving the impression that someone or something is moving in tandem with the living visitors, always just beyond sight. The basement of the Tempe facility is widely regarded as the epicenter of paranormal activity. According to local lore, this was where shock therapy and other experimental procedures were performed, often without proper consent or consideration for patient well-being. Many explorers have reported hearing screams and cries coming from the basement, sometimes accompanied by the low hum of electrical machinery. Paranormal teams have captured recordings featuring a faint buzzing, reminiscent of old electroshock equipment, followed immediately by high-pitched shrieks that seem to echo through the space, despite the fact that no functioning equipment remains. The combination of sound, energy, and environment creates an overwhelmingly unsettling experience for anyone who ventures too deep into the facility. Shadow figures are another common phenomenon. Visitors describe indistinct shapes moving across hallways, sometimes appearing to crouch, crawl, or stand silently at the end of rooms. Some report figures that seem aware, observing intruders before vanishing when approached. Others describe fleeting images of patients in outdated hospital gowns or staff in traditional nurse uniforms, drifting along corridors or appearing suddenly in peripheral vision. Many of these apparitions appear most vividly in areas once used for treatment or confinement, suggesting that the memories of suffering are strongest where the trauma was most intense. Auditory phenomena extend beyond screams and footsteps. Some explorers report faint whispers calling their names, often in hushed, urgent tones that seem impossibly close yet remain indistinguishable. Doors that should be firmly closed swing open without cause, and rusted locks are sometimes found undone after visitors pass through. Paranormal teams note that these events are not random. The activity often intensifies in rooms associated with extreme distress, suggesting a residual energy that reacts to the presence of living beings. Temperature fluctuations are another hallmark of the facility's haunting. Sudden, localized cold spots can send shivers down the spine, often accompanied by the sensation of being watched or touched. Some explorers have described invisible hands gripping their shoulders, tugging at clothing, or pressing against their chests. These physical sensations, paired with the auditory and visual phenomena, create a multi-sensory experience of fear and unease that makes the Tempe Mental Health Facility one of the most unnerving abandoned institutions in Arizona. The facility's design itself amplifies the terror. Narrow hallways, low ceilings, and clustered rooms create natural echoes, turning the slightest sound into a booming noise that resonates throughout the building. Broken windows cast fragmented light into hallways, producing shifting shadows that appear to move independently of natural light sources. The building's deterioration, collapsed ceilings, scattered debris, and warped floors adds an element of unpredictability, making it difficult to navigate and increasing the sense of danger and isolation. Local stories add layers to the facility's dark reputation. Some residents claim that certain patients were never properly transferred and may have died in hidden or forgotten rooms, their bodies never documented or accounted for. Others speak of staff who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, their fates unknown. These accounts, though anecdotal, create a context in which the unexplained events experienced by visitors gain credibility. Paranormal teams report consistency in the phenomena. Multiple groups over the years have documented screams, shadow figures, unexplained cold spots, and auditory anomalies in the same areas, reinforcing the belief that the building is haunted by the unresolved suffering of its past occupants. Despite the danger and fear, the Tempe Mental Health Facility continues to attract explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. The building offers a unique glimpse into a dark period of medical history, where desperation and inadequate care combine to create a space charged with lingering trauma. Those who enter the facility often leave profoundly affected, haunted by what they have seen, heard, or felt. The Tempe Mental Health Facility is more than an abandoned building. It is a repository of human suffering and unresolved tragedy. The screams, the shadowy figures, the electric buzzing of phantom machinery, and the invisible touches all serve as reminders that some pain persists beyond death. Those who dare to explore its halls may find themselves confronting not only the remnants of history, but the restless spirits that continue to inhabit the facility, unwilling or, perhaps, unable to leave. The Tucson Children's Hospital, once a beacon of hope for sick and injured children, now stands abandoned on the outskirts of Tucson, Arizona. Its crumbling walls and broken windows casting long shadows over the surrounding landscape. Constructed in the early 20th century, the hospital was designed to provide specialized care for pediatric patients at a time when medical treatment for children was limited and often rudimentary. Despite its noble purpose, the hospital became a site of tragedy, as countless young lives were lost to disease, accidents, and inadequate treatments. Over the decades, the building fell into disrepair, abandoned, and left to the mercy of the desert sun. Yet many insist that the spirits of the children it once treated never truly left. Visitors to the hospital describe a sense of unease before even entering the building. Its exterior, though sun-bleached and crumbling, gives the impression of silent observation. Rusted gates creak in the wind, and the surrounding grounds are overgrown with weeds, creating a barrier that keeps casual passers-by at a distance. Even in the bright Tucson daylight, the air seems heavy and charged, carrying the weight of years of sorrow and loss. Those who cross the threshold report feeling a chill, as if the building itself is aware of their presence. Inside, the hospital is a haunting vision of decay. Hallways are lined with peeling paint, broken tiles, and scattered debris. Rusted cribs and toppled chairs litter the wards, and remnants of toys once symbols of comfort lay shattered on the floor. The atmosphere is thick with silence, yet visitors often report hearing sounds that defy explanation. The laughter of children can echo through empty hallways, followed abruptly by the sound of sobbing or the scuffle of tiny footsteps. These auditory phenomena are so distinct that even skeptical explorers have found themselves jumping or freezing in place. Convinced that unseen children are moving through the corridors, shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena in the hospital. Witnesses describe seeing small children in old-fashioned hospital gowns standing in corners, sometimes looking directly at them before vanishing into thin air. Other figures appear to move through the halls, their forms indistinct but unmistakably human. Some explorers report seeing these apparitions, clutching toys or pressing tiny hands against dusty walls, only for the figures to disappear when approached. The presence of these ghosts is often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature, a sensation of being watched, or the faint scent of antiseptic long evaporated from the building. Perhaps the most unnerving phenomenon is the appearance of tiny handprints on dusty windows. Visitors often notice them suddenly, pressed into grime where no child has been physically present. The prints are clear and detailed, as if small hands reached out to touch the outside world. Some explorers report seeing multiple prints appear simultaneously, forming patterns that suggest playful or desperate gestures. Paranormal investigators believe these manifestations are residual energy, echoes of the children who spent their final days within the hospital, desperate to leave some mark of their existence behind. Auditory experiences extend beyond laughter and crying. Many visitors report hearing faint conversations in the distance, whispers in high-pitched tones, or the soft clatter of objects moving across floors. The sounds often come from rooms that appear empty, and sometimes occur in the middle of open corridors. Some explorers have captured recordings featuring giggling or crying voices that were not present during their time in the building, reinforcing the belief that the hospital is haunted by the spirits of the children who once lived and died there. The hospital's architectural features amplify the eerie atmosphere. Long corridors with high ceilings allow sounds to echo unnaturally, making footsteps and voices seem amplified and coming from multiple directions. Broken windows cast fragmented beams of sunlight that create moving shadows, often giving the illusion of figures darting across walls or along floors. The decay of ceilings, walls, and floors adds unpredictability to the space, making it easy to become disoriented and heightening the sense of fear for anyone exploring the building. Certain areas of the hospital are particularly active. Formal wards, surgical rooms, and play areas report the most intense paranormal activity. Visitors have described hearing the clatter of toys, the squeak of rusted beds, or the sounds of children running down hallways. Some have felt sudden touches on their arms or shoulders, as if invisible hands were brushing against them. In other cases, explorers have reported the sensation of being pulled slightly, as though an unseen child wanted their attention. These experiences are often accompanied by a sense of sorrow, as though the spirits are reaching out for comfort or acknowledgement from the living. Local lore reinforces the haunted reputation of the Tucson Children's Hospital. Residents tell stories of children who never recovered, some dying in the building and others disappearing under mysterious circumstances. Some speak of staff who vanished, their fates unknown. These stories, passed down over decades, provide a historical context for the paranormal phenomena, connecting the unexplained activity to the hospital's tragic past. Paranormal teams note that encounters with shadow figures, mysterious handprints, and unexplained sounds occur consistently, often in the same areas, suggesting the presence of unresolved energy or spirits that remain tethered to the hospital. Despite its dangers and reputation, the Tucson Children's Hospital continues to attract urban explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. For many, the building offers a chilling glimpse into a past marked by loss, pain, and incomplete lives. Those who enter often leave deeply affected, carrying with them a sense of unease and the lingering presence of the hospital's smallest residents. The Tucson Children's Hospital is more than a decaying building. It is a repository of sorrow and unresolved tragedy. The laughter, cries, shadowy figures, and handprints all serve as chilling reminders that some pain and loss persists beyond death. Visitors who step into its abandoned halls confront not only the remnants of history, but the enduring spirits of children who remain. watching, playing, and sometimes calling out to the living, ensuring that the memory of their lives and their suffering will not be forgotten. The Clifton Asylum, perched on the outskirts of Clifton, Arizona, is a chilling reminder of an era when mental health care was crude, overcrowded, and often inhumane. Constructed in the early 1900s, the facility was intended to house and treat patients suffering from a variety of psychiatric conditions. But the reality was far grimmer than the original plans suggested. Overcrowding became a constant problem, and the asylum's staff, overwhelmed and undertrained, could do little to provide proper care. Conditions deteriorated rapidly. Disease spread through the wards, food was scarce, and countless patients perished in isolation. Those who survived often endured mistreatment, neglect, and the psychological torment of being confined in an environment designed more for containment than healing. Today, the asylum stands in ruin, its crumbling walls and rusted gates giving only a hint of the horrors that took place within. Windows are shattered or boarded over, hallways are filled with debris, and peeling paint covers walls stained with decades of dust and decay. Despite the building's physical collapse, explorers and paranormal investigators report that the energy of the asylum's tragic past remains palpable, as though the memories of suffering have been etched permanently into the structure. Visitors often describe a suffocating atmosphere the moment they step inside, a sense that the building itself is watching and aware of their presence. Auditory phenomena are among the most commonly reported experiences at Clifton Asylum. Visitors frequently hear moans, cries, and muttered complaints echoing from empty cells and hallways. These sounds often appear to come from multiple directions at once, creating a disorienting effect that makes it difficult to pinpoint their source. Some explorers report hearing chains dragging along the floors, the metallic clatter amplifying the sensation of being in a place where suffering once reigned. Paranormal investigators have captured recordings of indistinct voices, some pleading for help, others repeating words or phrases that cannot be understood, lending credence to the belief that the asylum is haunted by the unresolved pain of its former patients. Shadow figures are another consistent phenomenon. Witnesses describe seeing human-shaped silhouettes pacing back and forth in cells or long corridors. Their movements slow and deliberate, as if performing routines frozen in time. Some appear to be confined within invisible walls, endlessly walking in patterns that suggest imprisonment long after death. Other figures emerge unexpectedly, drifting silently through hallways or appearing at the edge of vision, vanishing when approached. The presence of these shadows is often accompanied by sudden temperature drops, a feeling of being watched, and a deep, instinctual sense of fear. Physical interactions with the unseen are also reported at Clifton Asylum. Visitors often describe being touched or brushed by invisible hands, sometimes on their shoulders, arms, or backs. In some cases, explorers claim to have been pushed toward stairwells or away from particular rooms, as if the spirits are asserting control over the living and attempting to drive them out. These experiences are often sudden and intense, creating panic and forcing individuals to retreat from the building. The combination of tactile, auditory, and visual phenomena makes the asylum a location of high paranormal activity and one of Arizona's most unsettling abandoned mental health facilities. The architecture of the asylum contributes to its eerie atmosphere. Narrow corridors, high ceilings, and tightly packed cells create natural echoes that amplify every sound, turning the slightest movement into something ominous. Broken windows allow shards of light to cast moving patterns on walls and floors, creating fleeting shadows that appear to shift independently of natural sources. Peeling paint, collapsed ceilings, and scattered debris add unpredictability to each exploration, making the building feel unstable and heightening the sense of dread. Certain areas of the asylum are reported to be particularly active. Former wards, isolation rooms, and stairwells seem to attract the most paranormal activity. Visitors have reported hearing the scratch of nails on walls, the clatter of objects falling without cause, and the distant echo of anguished cries. Many explorers describe moments when they feel an oppressive pressure, as if invisible forces are attempting to prevent their passage or to exert control over their movement. These spaces carry the energy of confinement and despair, a lingering echo of the suffering endured by those who once inhabited them. Local lore surrounding Clifton Asylum adds to its haunted reputation. Residents tell stories of patients who were never released, dying quietly in locked cells, their deaths unrecorded or ignored. Others speak of staff members who vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind whispered tales of cruelty and neglect. These accounts, passed down over decades, give context to the unexplained phenomena experienced by visitors and create a chilling historical backdrop that reinforces the building's paranormal activity. Despite its danger and the fear it inspires, the Clifton Asylum continues to draw urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and thrill seekers. The building offers a stark and visceral connection to the past, allowing visitors to witness firsthand the remnants of a place marked by suffering, neglect, and death. Those who enter often leave profoundly affected, carrying with them an unshakable sense of unease and the lingering presence of the spirits within. The Clifton Asylum is more than a ruined building. It is a repository of anguish and unresolved tragedy. The moans echoing through empty cells, the shadowy figures pacing endlessly, and the invisible hands that reach out to the living serve as chilling reminders that some suffering does not fade with time. Visitors who step inside are confronted not only by history but by the restless spirits, who remain tethered to the halls, unwilling or unable to leave. The Holbrook Hospital, once a bustling center of care for the people of Holbrook, Arizona, now lies in a state of ruin, its faded walls and broken windows standing as a silent testament to decades of abandonment. Built in the early 20th century to serve a growing community, the hospital provided care for countless patients over the years, from minor injuries to serious illnesses. Despite its outward appearance as a place of healing, the hospital became associated with tragedy and death, as patients sometimes succumbed to illness within its walls. Today, the structure is avoided by most locals, who whisper stories of ghostly activity and unexplained phenomena that continue to haunt the abandoned building. Visitors to the Holbrook Hospital often describe an immediate sense of unease upon entering. The building, though weathered by sun and wind, exudes a palpable energy that feels almost alive. Rusted gates creak in the breeze. Peeling paint and shattered windows give the hospital a skeletal appearance, and the surrounding grounds are overrun with weeds and debris. Even during the day, the air inside feels heavy, as though the building itself remembers the pain and suffering that occurred within its walls. Those who explore its corridors frequently report a sensation of being watched, as though unseen eyes track their every move. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Holbrook Hospital is the appearance of shadowy figures, particularly those resembling nurses. Witnesses describe seeing women in old-fashioned nurse uniforms, their faces pale and hollow, their eyes dark voids that seem to look straight through anyone who meets their gaze. These apparitions are often observed moving slowly down corridors, disappearing when approached, or vanishing into walls that appear solid and intact. Some visitors have reported fleeting glimpses of figures standing silently in rooms, only to find the spaces empty seconds later, as if the spirits are lingering in the places where they once worked. Auditory experiences are another hallmark of the hospital's hauntings. Visitors often hear the sound of footsteps following them, always just behind, yet no one is ever visible. These footsteps echo through long hallways and empty wards, growing louder and more insistent as explorers move through the building. Other reports include the faint rustling of clothing, the creak of doors opening and closing, and whispers that seem to come from nowhere. Paranormal teams investigating the hospital have captured recordings of sounds that cannot be explained by the building's physical structure, including murmured voices, distant cries, and the unmistakable clatter of footsteps in rooms that remain empty. The scent of antiseptic is another eerie phenomenon frequently reported within Holbrook Hospital. Visitors describe a sudden sharp smell of hospital cleaning agents that appears without explanation, lingering in certain rooms before fading as mysteriously as it arrived. The odor often accompanies the appearance of apparitions or the onset of other paranormal events, leading some to believe that it is a residual imprint of the hospital's past, a lingering trace of the care once administered and the lives lost within its walls. Physical interactions with the unseen are also reported. Some explorers describe feeling sudden touches on their arms, shoulders, or backs, as if invisible hands are brushing against them. Others have felt a pressure on their chest or the sensation of being nudged or guided through certain areas, particularly in the older wings of the hospital. These experiences often coincide with visual or auditory phenomena, creating a multi-layered sense of unease that can be overwhelming for even the most seasoned paranormal investigators. The architecture of the Holbrook Hospital amplifies its haunting qualities. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and clustered patient rooms create natural echoes, making every sound seem larger and more ominous. Broken windows allow sunlight to cast fragmented light across hallways and floors, producing shifting shadows that appear to move independently of natural light sources. Collapsed ceilings, cracked tiles, and scattered debris add unpredictability to the environment, forcing visitors to navigate carefully while increasing their sense of vulnerability. Certain areas of the hospital are reportedly more active than others. Former wards, surgical rooms, and storage areas often exhibit the most intense paranormal phenomena. Visitors have described hearing beds creak, doors slam, and objects fall without explanation. Shadow figures are most commonly seen in these areas, and many explorers report sudden cold spots or the feeling of being watched, particularly near rooms where patients reportedly passed away. These locations seem to concentrate the hospital's residual energy, making encounters with spirits more likely. Local lore adds to the hospital's chilling reputation. Residents tell stories of patients who died within its walls, some quietly and others under more tragic circumstances. There are also accounts of staff members who vanished or suffered mysterious accidents, their fates never fully explained. These stories, passed down through generations, lend historical context to the paranormal phenomena experienced by visitors, connecting the unexplained events to real tragedies and reinforcing the building's haunted status. Despite the fear it inspires, Holbrook Hospital continues to attract urban explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. Many are drawn by the combination of historical significance and the chance to witness unexplained phenomena firsthand. Walking through its decaying halls, visitors experience a chilling connection to the past, where the echoes of patients, staff, and their suffering seem to linger in every shadow, sound, and scent. The Holbrook Hospital is more than a derelict structure. It is a repository of sorrow and unresolved tragedy. The hollow-eyed nurses, the footsteps following unseen, the sudden smells of antiseptic, and the occasional touch from invisible hands all serve as reminders that some pain does not fade with time. Those who step inside confront not only a piece of history, but the lingering presence of spirits who remain tethered to the hospital, unwilling or unable to leave. The Yuma Territorial Prison Infirmary, part of the infamous Yuma Prison in southwestern Arizona, stands as a stark reminder of the brutal conditions endured by inmates in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. While the prison is well known for its harsh cells, punishing labor, and escape attempts across the Colorado River, the infirmary carries a darker, quieter reputation. Unlike the general population areas, the infirmary was a place of suffering, where prisoners with untreated wounds, infectious diseases, and debilitating illnesses were sent to die. In an era before modern medicine and proper care, death was common, and the cries of the suffering became an unending echo in the thick stone walls. Today, the infirmary is abandoned, a decaying structure that has been partially preserved as part of the historic prison complex. Visitors entering the infirmary report a chilling sense of heaviness, as if the air itself is saturated with pain. Rusted bed frames remain in place, their metal frames corroded and bent, and the tile floors are cracked and worn, bearing silent witness to decades of anguish. Though the building is empty of life, the stories of paranormal activity suggest that the energy of those who suffered there has lingered, leaving a permanent imprint on the space. One of the most common phenomena reported by visitors is the appearance of shadowy figures in the infirmary. Witnesses describe prisoners in tattered uniforms, hunched over on the beds, or standing silently in corners, only to fade away when approached. Some have reported seeing figures pacing slowly along the narrow aisles between beds, their movements deliberate but ghostly. In certain cases, these apparitions appear to be reenacting their final moments, reliving pain, fear, or hopelessness over and over, unable to find release. Auditory experiences are equally unsettling. Many visitors hear agonized moans and cries echoing through the infirmary, seemingly coming from multiple directions at once, as though invisible prisoners are shackled and moving in agony. Some explorers report the low murmur of voices speaking in hurried whispers, often incomprehensible, yet filled with desperation. Paranormal investigators have recorded these sounds on audio devices, capturing moaning, groaning, and faint murmurs when no living person is present, lending credibility to the building's reputation as a haunted site. Temperature fluctuations are another hallmark of the infirmary's paranormal activity. Sudden localized cold spots often appear near beds or in hallways, accompanied by the sensation of being watched or the subtle brushing of unseen hands. Some visitors have described an almost suffocating pressure in certain corners, a heavy presence that forces them to retreat. These phenomena combine with the visual and auditory experiences to create an environment that is deeply unsettling, where the echoes of the past seem to reach forward and interact with the living. The layout and architecture of the infirmary contribute to its eerie atmosphere. Narrow corridors and closely packed beds create natural acoustics, amplifying every sound, from the creak of rusted metal to the faint scuffle of imagined footsteps. Broken windows allow fragmented light to filter through, casting moving shadows that appear to shift independently of the sun. The combination of decaying infrastructure, harsh angles, and the lingering memories of suffering creates a space where the line between past and present feels thin, and the presence of the deceased seems almost tangible. Certain areas of the infirmary are reportedly more active than others. Beds near the back rooms, once reserved for the most ill or dying prisoners, appear to host the most sightings and sounds. Visitors have described shadows sitting upright on beds, turning their heads to follow movement, or appearing to crawl along the floors before vanishing. The clatter of chains is strongest in these areas, often coinciding with sudden gusts of wind or inexplicable creaking noises. Paranormal teams have noted that these hotspots correspond closely with historical records of the infirmary, suggesting that the locations of suffering align with the areas of strongest residual energy. Local lore adds to the ominous reputation of the infirmary. Stories persist of prisoners who were abandoned to die, their deaths undocumented, and of inmates who perished without any proper care or ceremony. Some accounts speak of guards and staff who witnessed strange occurrences, from disembodied moans to fleeting glimpses of spectral figures moving between beds. These tales, passed down over generations, give context to the paranormal activity experienced by visitors today, grounding the eerie phenomena in a history of real suffering and tragedy. Despite the fear it inspires, the Yuma Territorial Prison Infirmary continues to attract ghost hunters, urban explorers, and historians. Its decaying walls and the chilling reports of spectral activity create a unique window into a dark chapter of Arizona's past. Visitors report leaving the infirmary with a lingering sense of unease, haunted by the images of prisoners in their final moments, the sounds of moaning and chains, and the oppressive atmosphere that seems to cling to every corner of the building. The Yuma Territorial Prison Infirmary is more than an abandoned medical wing. It is a place where the suffering of the past has left a permanent mark. The spectral figures, agonized moans, and rattling chains serve as chilling reminders that some pain lingers long after death. Those who enter confront not only a historic structure, but the restless spirits of prisoners, who endured unimaginable hardship, their presence a silent testament to the agony that once filled these walls. Even as the desert sun sets over Yuma, casting long shadows across the prison grounds, the infirmary awakens with echoes of the past. The cries, the chains, and the spectral figures remind all who dare enter that some places are haunted not merely by legend, but by the enduring presence of those who suffered and never found peace. The Douglas Tuberculosis Ward, located on the outskirts of Douglas, Arizona, is a haunting relic of a time when tuberculosis ravaged communities across the United States. Built in the early 1900s, the ward was designed to isolate and care for patients suffering from the deadly disease, taking advantage of the arid desert climate, which was believed to aid recovery. In reality, medical resources were scarce, treatments were rudimentary, and countless patients perished within its walls. The facility, intended as a sanctuary for healing, became a place of despair, where death often arrived quietly and mercilessly. Today, the ward stands abandoned, its walls crumbling, windows shattered, and corridors filled with the detritus of decades of neglect. Yet, despite the decay, those who enter report an unsettling presence, as if the building itself remembers the suffering that occurred there. Visitors describe a palpable heaviness in the air, a sense that the past is not entirely gone and that the ward continues to echo with the pain of those who lived and died within it. The combination of historical tragedy and abandoned architecture creates a chilling atmosphere that draws both curious explorers and paranormal investigators alike. Auditory phenomena are among the most commonly reported experiences in the Douglas Tuberculosis Ward. Visitors often hear coughing and wheezing coming from empty rooms, sounds so vivid and immediate that it is difficult to believe no one is present. The echoes of these afflictions travel down long hallways and across decaying floors, creating an almost hypnotic and oppressive environment. Some explorers report hearing patients' faint whispers or murmured pleas, often describing pain or desperation, as though the ward continues to hold the final breaths and thoughts of those who passed away decades ago. Paranormal teams have recorded these sounds on audio devices, capturing noises that defy explanation, reinforcing the ward's reputation as a hotspot of spectral activity. Visual phenomena are equally disturbing. Numerous visitors have reported seeing figures lying in old, rusted beds, staring blankly at the ceiling, only to dissolve into smoke or mist when approached. These apparitions often appear semi-transparent, their movements slow and deliberate, as if trapped in the final moments of life. Witnesses describe feeling a deep sense of sorrow when observing these figures, as though the emotions and suffering of the deceased have imprinted themselves on the very air of the ward. The effect is profoundly unsettling, creating a tangible connection between the living and the lingering presence of the dead. One of the most unnerving reported encounters involves a shadowy nurse, her form tall and indistinct, dressed in a traditional early 20th century uniform. Visitors often report sensing her presence before seeing her, feeling an oppressive gaze or the sensation of being followed. Those who have glimpsed her describe a silent figure moving through the hallways, sometimes appearing behind corners or near doorways, vanishing when approached but reappearing moments later in another part of the ward. Some explorers describe feeling as though she is guiding or warning them, while others feel a chilling malevolence, as if she is defending the patients who died under her care. The architecture of the ward itself contributes to the eerie atmosphere. Narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of small patient rooms create acoustics that amplify every sound, from footsteps to whispers, making the space feel alive even when completely empty. Broken windows allow desert light to filter in irregularly, casting shifting shadows that appear to move independently of the sun. The decaying walls, peeling paint, and scattered debris create a disorienting environment, enhancing the sense of unease and making every corner feel unpredictable and dangerous. Certain rooms in the ward are reportedly more active than others. Patient rooms in the center and rear of the building, where the most severely ill were housed, seem to host the strongest paranormal phenomena. Visitors report the coughing and wheezing as being particularly intense in these spaces, along with fleeting glimpses of figures lying in beds. Objects have been reported moving on their own rusted bed frames, tilting, medical charts fluttering, and old linens shifting as if brushed by invisible hands. Paranormal investigators suggest that these areas concentrate residual energy, preserving the suffering of patients who died there and creating a hotspot for spectral manifestations. The history of the Douglas tuberculosis ward lends credibility to the disturbing reports. Archival records indicate that the facility struggled with limited medical resources, overcrowding, and inadequate staffing. Many patients died without family present, their final moments spent in solitude. Stories of suffering, isolation, and death passed down by locals help explain the consistent reports of paranormal activity, giving a historical framework to the inexplicable experiences encountered by visitors today. Despite the fear and unsettling nature of the ward, it continues to attract urban explorers, historians, and ghost hunters. Those who enter report leaving deeply affected, carrying with them an unshakable sense of unease. The combination of visual apparitions, auditory phenomena, and the oppressive weight of history ensures that visitors are constantly reminded of the human lives once entwined with the building, and the lingering presence of those who suffered and died there. The Douglas tuberculosis ward is more than an abandoned medical facility. It is a monument to pain, death, and lingering spirits. The coughing, the wheezing, the shadowy patients, and the mysterious nurse all serve as chilling reminders that some suffering does not fade with time. Visitors who step inside encounter not only the remnants of a historical institution, but also the restless spirits who remain tethered to its walls, their presence a permanent echo of the lives once held and lost within the ward. As the desert sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across Douglas, the ward comes alive with echoes of the past. The coughing, the spectral figures, and the silent nurse create an atmosphere that is both terrifying and tragic, a haunting testament to the enduring memory of those who lived, suffered, and died within the walls of the Douglas tuberculosis ward. The Apache Junction Asylum, perched on the outskirts of Apache Junction, Arizona, is one of the state's most notorious haunted locations, despite the scarcity of historical records. Built in the early 1900s, little is known about the inner workings of the asylum or the treatment methods used within its walls. But local legends paint a chilling picture of overcrowding, mistreatment, and suffering. The facility was abandoned decades ago, leaving only crumbling ruins behind. Yet the stories of ghostly activity have kept the asylum alive in the minds of explorers, paranormal investigators, and thrill seekers. Those who venture near speak of an energy that is oppressive, almost sentient, as if the land itself has absorbed decades of anguish. Visitors to the Apache Junction Asylum often describe an overwhelming sense of dread upon approaching the ruins. The building, partially collapsed and overtaken by desert brush, seems to loom unnaturally against the skyline. Rustic gates swing in the wind, cracked windows gape like open mouths, and peeling paint and crumbling walls hint at the years of neglect. Those who enter report a sensation of being watched, a cold pressure that settles over the body, and an almost tangible heaviness in the air, as though the suffering of past patients still lingers in the halls. Auditory phenomena are among the most common and disturbing experiences reported at the asylum. Visitors often hear screams echoing from empty rooms, high-pitched cries that seem to reverberate through the ruins with no apparent source. Some describe whispers in unintelligible languages, muttered urgently and insistently, as though the voices are attempting to communicate from beyond. Paranormal teams investigating the asylum have captured audio recordings of these unsettling sounds, documenting screams, murmurs, and sudden banging noises, all occurring in areas where no human presence is possible. Witnesses describe dark mists forming in hallways and stairwells, taking on vague humanoid shapes before dissipating into the air. These mists often appear in corners or along corridors, moving slowly and deliberately, as if searching or watching. Shadow figures are another frequent sighting, pacing through rooms or disappearing suddenly when approached. Some explorers have reported glimpses of figures darting past them, just out of reach, followed by a sudden drop in temperature or the sensation of being pushed. The combination of these visual experiences with auditory disturbances creates an environment that feels alive with the restless presence of those who once lived in, suffered within the asylum. Physical interactions with the unseen are also reported. Many visitors recount being touched or brushed by invisible hands, particularly along the arms or shoulders, and in some instances, feeling as though they are being guided or driven through the ruins by an unseen force. Some explorers report sudden shoves or nudges, often in areas associated with the most active paranormal phenomena, creating a heightened sense of fear and disorientation. These physical sensations reinforce the belief that the asylum is not only haunted, but that the spirits within it retain agency, interacting with the living in ways that are both terrifying and inexplicable. The architecture of the asylum contributes significantly to the unsettling atmosphere. Long, narrow corridors echo with every sound, amplifying whispers, footsteps, and the occasional clang of debris. Broken windows allow desert sunlight to cast irregular shadows, which shift unpredictably as the day passes, creating fleeting illusions of movement. Collapsed ceilings and scattered rubble force visitors to navigate cautiously, further heightening the sense of vulnerability. The combination of structural decay and the history of suffering amplifies the paranormal phenomena, making each exploration a tense and immersive experience. Certain areas of the asylum appear to be particularly active. Former wards, isolation rooms, and stairwells are hotspots for reported paranormal activity. Visitors frequently hear screaming in these spaces, sometimes accompanied by the dark mist or shadowy figures. Many explorers describe a sudden drop in temperature, followed by whispers or footsteps, intensifying the fear of being followed or confronted by an unseen presence. Paranormal teams often find that these locations correlate with historical accounts of patient confinement and treatment, suggesting a lingering imprint of the pain and terror that occurred there. Local folklore surrounding the Apache Junction Asylum reinforces its chilling reputation. Residents speak of patients who were abandoned, forgotten, or subjected to cruel treatment, and of staff members who vanished under mysterious circumstances. Some locals believe the land itself is cursed, a repository of trapped souls who cannot move on, bound to the ruins for eternity. These stories, passed down through generations, provide context for the unexplained phenomena experienced by visitors today, connecting the paranormal activity to a history of human suffering and tragedy. Despite the fear it inspires, the asylum continues to attract ghost hunters, urban explorers, and thrill seekers. Those who enter report leaving deeply affected, carrying with them a sense of unease that lingers long after they have departed. The combination of screams, shadow figures, dark mists, and the oppressive energy of the site ensures that the ruins remain a powerful and terrifying destination for anyone willing to confront the unknown. The Apache Junction Asylum is more than a crumbling structure. It is a living monument to the suffering, fear, and unresolved tragedies of its past. The screams, whispers, dark mist, and shadowy figures serve as chilling reminders that some pain leaves a permanent mark on a place. Visitors who step inside confront not only the physical ruins, but also the restless spirits that continue to inhabit the asylum, a testament to the human anguish that refuses to fade. As night falls over Apache Junction, the ruins take on an even more menacing presence. The wind carries faint whispers and distant screams. The shadows lengthen, and the dark mist forms along corridors, as if the asylum itself is awakening. For those brave or foolish enough to enter, the Apache Junction Asylum is a place where history, horror, and the supernatural converge, leaving an indelible mark on anyone who dares to walk its haunted halls. The Kingman State Hospital, located on the outskirts of Kingman, Arizona, is a haunting relic of a bygone era, its decaying walls and empty corridors bearing silent witness to decades of suffering. Built in the early 20th century, the hospitals served patients from across the region, treating a variety of mental and physical illnesses. Despite its original purpose as a place of care, rumors of mistreatment, neglect, and untimely deaths quickly became entwined with its history. The hospital was eventually abandoned, leaving behind a structure that now stands in ruin, yet continues to draw those seeking to experience its dark and mysterious past. Visitors to the Kingman State Hospital often describe an oppressive atmosphere as soon as they step onto the grounds. Broken windows, rusted gates, and crumbling brickwork give the building a skeletal appearance, while overgrown weeds and scattered debris enhance its abandoned aura. Many explorers report an immediate sense of being watched, as though unseen eyes are tracking their movements. The air inside the hospital is heavy and cold, carrying the weight of decades of pain, fear, and despair. Even during the day, the halls feel alive with residual energy, a palpable reminder of the suffering that took place within the walls. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at the Kingman State Hospital is the appearance of ghostly apparitions. Visitors have described seeing figures in old-fashioned hospital uniforms, moving slowly down hallways or standing in patient rooms. Some of the most unsettling reports involve doctors with glowing eyes, who appear suddenly at the end of a corridor before vanishing when approached. These figures are often described as tall and imposing, their presence radiating a chilling authority. Witnesses often feel an immediate sense of dread, as if the apparitions are observing or judging them, creating an experience that is as terrifying as it is mysterious. Auditory phenomena are also frequently reported. Many visitors hear the sounds of patients crying, calling out for help, or whispering unintelligible phrases. These voices often seem to echo through empty corridors, amplifying the sense of isolation and fear. Footsteps are commonly heard following explorers, despite the emptiness of the halls, and doors have been known to slam shut without any apparent cause. Paranormal investigators have recorded these sounds, capturing faint cries, whispers, and footsteps on audio devices, all occurring in areas that appear completely vacant. Physical interactions with the unseen are another hallmark of the hospital's haunting. Numerous visitors have reported being scratched, grabbed, or pushed by invisible hands. Some describe feeling sudden pressure on their backs or shoulders, while others recount cold, clammy touches that send shivers down their spines. In some cases, explorers have left the hospital with red scratches on their arms or backs, as though the spirits within are not only present but capable of physical interaction. These encounters often occur near patient rooms or corridors where the most intense apparitions are reported, suggesting a lingering attachment of the spirits to the areas where they once lived or worked. The architecture of the hospital itself contributes to the unsettling atmosphere. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of patient rooms create acoustics that amplify every sound. From creaking floorboards to distant footsteps, broken windows allow shafts of sunlight to filter in unevenly. Collapsed ceilings, cracked tiles, and debris-strewn floors add to the sense of danger and unpredictability, making each step feel precarious. The building's physical decay enhances the perception of paranormal activity, as every shadow, sound, and gust of wind can be interpreted as evidence of the unseen. Certain areas of the hospital are reportedly more active than others. Former wards, surgical rooms, and isolation areas are hotspots for both visual and auditory phenomena. Visitors often report seeing ghostly figures in these spaces, hearing cries of distress, and feeling unexplained touches. Paranormal investigators note that these locations frequently correspond to historical records of patient care and incidents, suggesting a connection between the intensity of haunting and the areas where suffering was most concentrated. Local folklore adds to the hospital's eerie reputation. Stories persist of patients who were mistreated, abandoned, or died under mysterious circumstances, as well as staff members who reportedly disappeared without explanation. Residents speak of unexplained lights in the windows at night, shadowy figures moving inside, and chilling screams that seem to carry across the surrounding grounds. These tales, passed down through generations, lend context to the unexplained phenomena experienced by visitors and reinforce the belief that the hospital is more than just an abandoned, Building it is a repository of restless spirits. Despite its frightening reputation, Kingman State Hospital continues to attract ghost hunters, urban explorers, and thrill seekers. Those who enter report leaving with a lingering sense of unease, haunted not only by what they saw, but by the oppressive atmosphere that pervades the building. The combination of ghostly apparitions, cries for help, scratches from unseen hands, and an overall sense of dread ensures that visitors remember their experiences long after they leave. The Kingman State Hospital is more than an abandoned medical facility. It is a monument to suffering, fear, and unresolved tragedy. The glowing-eyed doctors, crying patients, and unexplained physical interactions serve as chilling reminders that some pain lingers long after death. Those who step inside confront not only the physical remnants of history, but also the spirits who remain tethered to its walls. A permanent echo of the lives lost and the anguish endured within this haunted hospital. As the sun sets over Kingman, casting long shadows across the decaying structure, the hospital seems to awaken. The cries, the footsteps, and the spectral figures come alive in the fading light, a terrifying reminder that some places carry the weight of the past in ways that cannot be ignored. For those brave or foolhardy enough to enter, Kingman State Hospital offers an unforgettable encounter with the supernatural, where history and horror converge in the shadows of its abandoned halls. The Safford Clinic and Sanatorium, located in the remote outskirts of Safford, Arizona, is a decaying relic of early 20th century medical care. Originally built to treat the sick and dying, it functioned as both a clinic for minor illnesses and a sanatorium for patients suffering from chronic and contagious diseases. In its heyday, the facility saw long nights of labor for the doctors and nurses who worked tirelessly to save lives. Yet, despite their efforts, death was a frequent companion, and many patients perished within its walls. Over the decades, the building fell into disuse and disrepair, leaving only crumbling walls, shattered windows, and a legacy of eerie stories that continue to attract explorers and paranormal enthusiasts. Visitors to the Safford Clinic and Sanatorium often describe a sense of unease the moment they approach the property. The structure, now partially collapsed and overgrown with desert brush, exudes a foreboding presence. Rusted gates creak in the wind, and broken windows gape like hollow eyes staring into the vast Arizona sky. Inside, the corridors are lined with debris and peeling paint, while the air carries a heavy, oppressive weight, as though the building itself remembers the suffering that occurred there. The atmosphere is often described as stifling, with a chill that cuts through even on the sunniest days. An early sign that the sanatorium is more than just an abandoned building. Auditory phenomena are among the most commonly reported experiences. Explorers frequently hear footsteps on the upper floors, despite being the only people in the building. The sound of shuffling shoes on wooden floors or the faint dragging of carts creates the illusion that the staff are still moving about their duties. Whispered voices are also commonly reported, sometimes urgent and pleading, other times faint and incoherent. Paranormal investigators have recorded these noises, capturing footsteps, soft moans, and indistinct murmurs in rooms long since abandoned. The repetition and consistency of these sounds suggest that the energy of the sanatorium is persistent, replaying the final actions and sounds of those who once lived and worked there. Temperature anomalies add another layer of unease. Visitors often encounter sudden cold spots, some so intense that they feel as though stepping into a freezer. These pockets of icy air are reported to move with them as they explore, creating an almost physical sensation of being followed or watched. Some explorers describe shivering despite warm desert temperatures outside, attributing the phenomenon to residual energy left behind by the patients who suffered and died within the building. These extreme temperature shifts often coincide with other reported paranormal activity, including apparitions and unexplained noises, amplifying the overall fear factor for anyone inside. Visual phenomena are equally unsettling. Numerous witnesses have reported seeing shadowy figures darting down hallways or rushing past rooms, often described as phantom nurses in early 20th century uniforms. These figures move with urgency, as if still attending to patients, and vanish when approached. Some explorers have seen indistinct humanoid shapes standing near empty beds or peering from corners, only to dissolve into mist. Others report fleeting glimpses of patients lying in the rooms where they once received care, staring at the ceiling with hollow eyes before fading away. The effect is chilling, leaving visitors with the undeniable impression that the spirits of the past are active within the building. The architecture of the Safford Clinic and Sanatorium amplifies the sense of unease. Long, narrow hallways, high ceilings, and rows of patient rooms create acoustics that make every sound seem amplified. Broken windows allow shafts of sunlight to stream unevenly into the building, casting shifting shadows that seem to move independently. Collapsed ceilings and scattered debris force visitors to navigate cautiously, making every step feel precarious. The combination of physical decay and historical suffering heightens the perception of paranormal activity, as every shadow, sound, and draft becomes a potential encounter with the unknown. Certain areas of the sanatorium appear to be more active than others. The upper floors, once used for patient wards, seem to host the most visual and auditory phenomena. Explorers report footsteps and the faint rustle of clothing as phantom figures move along the hallways. Patient rooms on these floors are especially active, with occasional glimpses of spectral patients lying in beds, murmuring unintelligible words, or vanishing into the walls. These areas correspond with historical accounts of patient care and treatments, suggesting that the residual energy of those who suffered remains concentrated in the spaces where it was most intense. Local legends surrounding the Safford Clinic and Sanatorium reinforce its haunting reputation. Residents speak of patients abandoned or neglected, some of whom died alone in their rooms. Staff members who once worked tirelessly to save lives are said to have left behind strong impressions, their spirits lingering in the hallways, eternally performing their duties. Tales of unexplained footsteps, rushing figures, and sudden drops in temperature have been passed down through generations, giving context to the modern experiences of explorers and paranormal teams. Despite the fear it inspires, the Safford Clinic and Sanatorium continues to attract thrill seekers, historians, and ghost hunters. Visitors leave profoundly affected, haunted not only by what they have seen and heard, but by the oppressive weight of history that hangs over the building. The combination of footsteps, phantom nurses, cold spots, and shadowy patients ensures that every exploration leaves an indelible impression. The Safford Clinic and Sanatorium is more than an abandoned medical building. It is a monument to suffering, dedication, and unresolved spirits. The echoes of patient suffering, the rushing figures of phantom nurses, and the oppressive chill serve as reminders that the past never truly leaves. Those who enter confront not only the remnants of history, but the lingering presence of the people who once lived, worked, and died there, trapped forever in the echoes of the sanatorium's haunted halls. The Winslow Hospital, situated in the heart of Winslow, Arizona, is a decaying structure steeped in decades of tragedy and eerie tales. Built in the early 1900s to serve the growing population of the town, the hospital once functioned as a hub for medical care, treating everything from minor injuries to serious illnesses. Over time, as newer facilities were constructed, Winslow Hospital was abandoned, left to the desert sun and wind, slowly crumbling into ruin. Today, the building is a magnet for paranormal enthusiasts, explorers, and those drawn to the macabre. As reports of supernatural activity continue to emerge from its desolate halls, visitors to Winslow Hospital often describe an immediate sense of unease upon entering the grounds. The building, now weathered and battered, has rusted gates that creak in the wind and windows that have long since shattered, leaving jagged edges like broken teeth. Inside, peeling paint, cracked floors, and collapsed ceilings create a labyrinth of decay. Despite the building's emptiness, many who venture inside report feeling watched, as if unseen eyes follow their every movement. The atmosphere is oppressive and heavy, a lingering residue of the suffering that occurred there over a century ago. Auditory phenomena are among the most frequently reported experiences. Numerous visitors have heard women crying softly, their sobs echoing down empty hallways. In the maternity ward, once filled with joy and life, explorers have reported the sound of babies crying high-pitched wails that seem impossibly real, bouncing off cracked walls and abandoned medical equipment. These sounds often come from rooms that are otherwise completely empty, and witnesses describe a profound sense of sadness accompanying the cries, as if the building itself mourns the lives it once held. Paranormal investigators have captured these sounds on audio devices, recording the eerie cries and sobs, even when no one is present, reinforcing the hospital's haunted reputation. Visual phenomena are equally unsettling. Many witnesses report seeing shadowy figures moving in the hallways, often appearing as women in long hospital gowns, their faces obscured or pale and hollow. One visitor describes seeing a bloodied handprint suddenly appear on a wall directly in front of him, only to fade seconds later, leaving him frozen in shock. Other explorers have reported fleeting glimpses of figures in the maternity ward, women cradling invisible infants or standing silently beside empty cribs before disappearing. These apparitions create a chilling reminder that the past lives of the hospital remain etched into its walls, unwilling to move on. Physical sensations are a recurring element of the Winslow Hospital experience. Visitors frequently describe sudden drops in temperature, sometimes so cold it feels as if they have stepped into a freezer. Others report feeling light touches, brushes against the arm, or even the sensation of being guided or nudged through hallways by unseen forces. Some explorers have left the building with unexplained scratches or bruises, as if invisible hands had marked them in passing. These physical interactions intensify the fear and suspense, reinforcing the idea that the spirits within the hospital retain a tangible presence, capable of affecting the living. The layout and architecture of Winslow Hospital amplify the haunting experiences. Narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of patient rooms create an acoustic environment that magnifies every sound from the faintest whisper to the scuff of footsteps. Broken windows allow beams of light to stream into the hallways at odd angles, casting shadows that appear to move independently. Collapsed floors and scattered debris create obstacles, forcing visitors to navigate cautiously, enhancing the sense of danger and unpredictability. The combination of structural decay and historical trauma ensures that the hospital feels alive with unseen energy. Certain areas of the hospital appear more active than others. The maternity ward is consistently cited as a hotspot for paranormal activity, with unexplained cries of infants, apparitions of women, and fleeting touches. Patient rooms on the upper floors are similarly active, with reports of shadow figures pacing silently, objects moving on their own, and chilling cold spots. Investigators note that these areas correspond with locations where significant emotional and physical suffering would have occurred, suggesting that the residual energy of the hospital is concentrated in spaces tied to life, death, and grief. Local lore reinforces the haunted reputation of Winslow Hospital. Stories persist of patients who died alone in their beds, of nurses who worked tirelessly but perished on duty, and of tragic events in the maternity ward that left a permanent mark on the building. Residents speak of unexplained lights in windows, shadowy figures in the hallways, and cries that drift across the property at night. These tales, passed down through generations, provide context to the unexplained phenomena, offering a historical framework for the experiences reported by modern visitors. Despite the fear and unsettling nature of the building, Winslow Hospital continues to draw ghost hunters, urban explorers, and curious thrill seekers. Those who enter rarely leave untouched, often describing a lingering sense of sorrow, dread, and fascination that stays with them long after they have exited the ruins. The combination of crying women, spectral infants, bloodied handprints, and cold spots creates an immersive experience of fear, history, and the supernatural. Winslow Hospital is more than an abandoned medical building. It is a repository of the emotions, suffering, and spirits of those who once inhabited it. The apparitions, the cries, and the mysterious physical interactions serve as chilling reminders that the past refuses to fade. For those who step inside, the hospital offers an unforgettable encounter with the supernatural, where history, horror, and unresolved spirits converge within its decaying walls. As night falls over Winslow, the building seems to awaken. Shadows stretch across corridors, cries echo in empty rooms, and the cold air presses against the skin of anyone who dares enter. For those who explore the Winslow Hospital, it is a place where the past is never truly gone, and where the echoes of sorrow, tragedy, and supernatural activity remain trapped in the walls, waiting for the living to witness their haunting. The Coconino County Asylum, located on the outskirts of Flagstaff, Arizona, stands as a chilling monument to a dark chapter in the state's history. Built in the early 1900s, the asylum was intended to care for the mentally ill, but over time, it became infamous for neglect, abuse, and inhumane treatment. Patients were subjected to harsh therapies, overcrowded conditions, and at times, cruel punishment rather than proper medical care. Many who entered the asylum never left, their deaths unrecorded or dismissed, leaving only whispered tales of suffering and despair behind. Decades after its closure, the asylum remains abandoned, its crumbling walls now a hotspot for paranormal activity, attracting explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers drawn to the building's haunting reputation. Visitors report a sense of foreboding as soon as they approach the asylum. The building's structure, once imposing, now leans and decays, with broken windows, rusted gates, and collapsing walls, giving it the appearance of a skeletal carcass. Inside, the corridors are long and narrow, with peeling paint, exposed wiring, and debris scattered across the floors. The air is heavy, carrying an oppressive chill that seems to cling to the body, as though the asylum itself is aware of every visitor who enters. Many report feeling an immediate sense of being watched, a weight pressing down that grows more intense the deeper they explore. Auditory experiences are among the most frequently reported phenomena at the asylum. Visitors often hear screams echoing through empty hallways, sharp and desperate cries that seem to come from nowhere. Some explorers report hearing the anguished voice of a patient calling, "Don't leave me," over and over, the sound chillingly human and heartbreakingly urgent. Footsteps are also commonly heard following explorers, though no one else is present. Paranormal investigators have captured these sounds on recording devices, documenting screams, whispers, and footsteps occurring in locations that appear completely empty, further cementing the asylum's reputation as a site of restless spirits. Visual phenomena are equally unsettling. Witnesses frequently describe dark, shadowy figures moving at the far end of hallways or lurking in corners. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving only an echo of movement and a rising sense of dread. Some visitors report seeing shapes resembling patients, crouched or pacing silently, only to disappear when they attempt to focus on them. Others have witnessed apparitions of staff members, ghostly nurses and doctors, moving hurriedly along hallways, as if still performing their duties. One paranormal team captured footage of a door violently slamming shut on its own, an event consistent with the reports of aggressive or restless spirits inhabiting the building. Temperature anomalies are a common occurrence within the asylum. Explorers often report sudden drops in temperature that feel unnatural, even on warm days, with cold spots lingering in hallways or rooms where significant paranormal activity has been observed. Some describe the sensation of an icy hand brushing against their skin, reinforcing the impression that unseen forces are actively present and capable of interacting with the living. These cold spots, combined with the auditory and visual phenomena, create an environment of sustained tension, leaving visitors anxious and on edge as they navigate the building's decaying interior. Physical interactions with the supernatural are also frequently reported. Visitors recount feeling invisible hands gripping their arms or shoulders, sudden nudges, or the sensation of being guided door forced through certain areas. Some explorers have left with scratches on their arms or backs, unexplained bruising, or the feeling of pressure on their chest, as if the building is asserting control over those who trespass. These physical encounters often occur near patient rooms, isolation areas, or the upper floors, locations believed to be the most active due to the intense suffering that historically occurred there. The architecture and design of the asylum amplify the chilling experience. Long corridors echo every footstep, every creak of debris, and every whisper, magnifying the sensation of presence. High ceilings and wide, empty wards create acoustics that make sounds travel unnaturally far, sometimes causing explorers to question whether the noises they hear are real or imagined. Broken windows allow flickering sunlight to create shifting shadows that seem alive, further disorienting visitors. Collapsed floors, loose boards, and piles of rubble force explorers to navigate cautiously, heightening the tension and sense of vulnerability throughout the building. Certain areas of the asylum appear to be especially active. Isolation rooms, patient wards, and stairwells are frequently cited as hotspots for both auditory and visual phenomena. Paranormal teams consistently report increased activity in these spaces, often correlating with historical accounts of mistreatment and high patient mortality. In these areas, screams, shadows, and cold spots converge, creating an atmosphere of intense fear that is difficult to shake even after leaving the premises. Local legends surrounding the Coconino County Asylum enhance its eerie reputation. Residents tell of patients who were left to suffer alone, staff members who disappeared mysteriously, and unexplained incidents that continued to occur long after the asylum closed. Stories of doors slamming, objects moving on their own, and cries echoing into the night have been passed down for generations. Many locals believe that once you step inside, the asylum does not let go easily. Its restless spirits tethered to the building by the anguish they endured in life. Despite its terrifying reputation, the Coconino County Asylum remains a popular destination for ghost hunters and curious explorers. Visitors leave the building haunted not only by the sights and sounds, but by the oppressive weight of history embedded in the structure. The combination of screaming voices, dark figures, cold spots, and physical interactions ensures that every exploration is unforgettable. The Coconino County Asylum is more than an abandoned hospital. It is a repository of suffering, fear, and unresolved tragedy. Its shadowed halls, echoing cries, and restless apparitions serve as a chilling reminder that the past refuses to fade. For those daring enough to enter, the asylum offers an encounter with history and the supernatural, where pain, horror, and mystery converge in the shadows of its abandoned corridors. As night falls over Flagstaff, the crumbling asylum takes on an even more menacing presence. Screams echo, shadows twist along decaying walls, and the air grows icy with the presence of unseen entities. For those who step inside the Coconino County Asylum, it is a place where the past is never truly gone, and where the spirits of the forgotten continue to assert their presence in chilling ways. Arizona's deserts are vast, silent, and unforgiving, but hidden within that silence are echoes of the past, screams, whispers, and footsteps that no longer belong to the living. These 25 abandoned hospitals and asylums remind us of how close life and death truly are, and how easily suffering can leave its mark, even after the walls crumble. Some say ghosts linger where pain was greatest. Others believe these spirits are trapped, forever reliving their last moments. The question is, would you dare step inside one of these ruins? To hear the whispers yourself? To feel the cold hand of the past brush against your skin? Or is it safer to leave Arizona's haunted halls to the dead? Thank you for joining me tonight on this journey into Arizona's forgotten hospitals and asylums. If you enjoyed this descent into darkness, make sure to like, subscribe, and return for more tales of terror. Until next time, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and remember, sometimes the dead are closer than you think.